The 2026 NFL Draft is officially in the books. Thank you to everybody who came by to the streams, checked out the tweets, twitter.com/Bengal YouTube, and of course, have watched the videos. There are a lot more to come, so make sure you are subscribed and please subscribe now, because once you hear my draft grades for your favorite team, I'm sure you're going to like me a little bit less. That's generally how this works. But we're going to kick things off with the Arizona Cardinals. And for me, I thought the Arizona Cardinals had a very interesting draft. I've decided to give it a C+. And I think that's good, right? I think they got some good players. Jeremiah Love at 3 is a simply phenomenal player. I mean, this is an upper echelon type running back prospect. You know, people ask me where I rank Jeremiah Love as a prospect compared to the Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Ashton Genties of the world. And I think he is not in the same tier as Saquon Barkley, who I think was pretty much in a tier of his own, but I think he's right there. I think he is in the Genty, Bijan, and Jeremiah Love tier of recent top running back prospects. He is that level of talent. So to see him get drafted at number 3 overall is not exactly out of this world in a not so great overall class. Lacking true blue chip players, but at the same time, it is an absolutely insane financial commitment to the running back position, which, as we know, is pretty much the most replaceable position in football. However, the whole argument there is purely financial. Some people say, well, if you can get 80% of Jeremiah Love in the 6th round, just do that. Well, it's like 80% of Jeremiah Love does not amount to what Jeremiah Love can actually do on a football field. In terms of what he's going to do for Mike LaFleur, this guy can really catch the ball out of the backfield. He's obviously a home run hitter, but it's such a significant financial investment. He's already, I believe, the 6th highest paid running back per year in terms of average annual salary. The previous top guarantee to a running back was Saquon Barkley at $36 million per year. Jeremiah Love is going to exceed that by a significant amount. I think it's $53 million fully guaranteed. So it is a large financial commitment to the running back position. I think he's a special type of a player, but we do need to think about when team building, especially for a team that's far away like Arizona is, this is a lot of money to put into the running back position. Of course, they also brought in Tyler Algier. Why? If they knew they were going to be able to get Jeremiah Love, they re-signed Bam Knight. Why? They have Trey Benson, who they don't like, obviously, and they have James Conner, who's older and has been hurt, but is a decent player. But I don't understand bringing in Algier if you knew you were going to draft Love. And we do have to talk about when bringing in Jeremiah Love, it is such a significant financial commitment, and I can only say that so many times. But in terms of what he's going to bring to the team, he's a phenomenal player. I like Chase Basantis at the top of the 2nd round. I thought he was one of the better guards in this class, one of the best pass protecting guards for sure. I mean, he's shown his mean streak in the run game as well. I think he's a solid pickup. The team needed to improve the offensive line, and they didn't really come away with the right tackle that they needed. So I guess they're really going to be committed to the guy that they signed out of free agency, which is Elijah Wilkinson, who really has not started consistently his entire career, but did start all 17 games last year for Atlanta. So there are worse options. Carson Beck in the 3rd. I mean, we knew the Cardinals were going to come away with a quarterback. I just wonder if Carson Beck is ever going to be the pre-injury Carson Beck that actually looked like a potentially promising prospect. In terms of how I graded him out going into the 2026 NFL Draft, it wasn't especially high. And I just wonder if he's still going to be able to make these tight window throws that you're going to need to be able to make at the NFL level, because I just don't think the arm talent that he showed at Miami is what he showed at Georgia. And he's still, at times, quite turnover prone, even though they say he sees the field really well and he's apparently, this quarterback guru type of guy. I really did not see him as a top of the 3rd round type of prospect, but he plays quarterback, which is quite valuable, of course. Caleb Proctor, Reggie Vertle, Carson Sherrar, and Jaden Williams finished out this draft class. I like Caleb Proctor. Now, he was someone that I was told was going to go higher than expected, and I guess 104 is probably about right. He is undersized. I'd love to be able to pull it up here, but he is quite small for an interior defensive lineman. I think probably close to 280 pounds, maybe 283, 285. He's listed on the Southeastern Louisiana website at 280, but I think he was at the combine at 291. So he is a lighter interior defensive lineman, but he moves really, really well. So as a sub-package player, you might find some real pass rush from Caleb Proctor down the board. And then, of course, as you get into day 3, you're really just looking for, mostly role players. That could be special teams. That could be, sub-package players. And that could be backups across the offensive line. Jaden Williams was the right tackle that they decided to grab. I don't know if he's ever going to play significant snaps for them at all. So we'll see what happens. But overall, I think the Cardinals, with a bunch of premium picks, had an interesting draft. I get why they did what they did, but I thought there was more potential here. But it's hard to argue with the talent of Jeremiah Love, and I think Basantis eventually becomes a solid starter. The Atlanta Falcons did not have a tremendous amount of picks, only 6 in the entire draft, but I like what they were able to do. And of course, you got to factor in that they traded up for James Pierce the year prior, so no first-round pick here. But they really came away with a first-round talent, which is what I thought Avion Terrell was. Now, first of all, what an incredible story. Avion Terrell teaming up with his brother AJ, unbelievable. And why didn't he go in the first round like his brother AJ did? It comes down to size. He's got average to below average size and length, and some might think he's going to stick in the nickel and play slot corner instead of on the boundary, which is a traditionally more valuable position. I think, even despite being undersized, Avion Terrell can play on the boundary. We've seen it. He does a phenomenal job staying in phase. He does a great job mirroring and matching in coverage. And I think that there's probably no better player at punching out the football in this draft. And Emmanuel McNeil-Warren's quite good at that. Jacob Rodriguez is quite good at that. We'll talk about them when we get to the teams that drafted those players. But I think Terrell is just like everything you want in a corner. He's competitive as ever. He's feisty. I mean, I can describe a lot of the things I would say about D'Angelo Pons, but I think Terrell's got a way better chance of sticking on the outside. I am a huge fan of his game. I actually like him more as a prospect than I did AJ Terrell coming out. So I was really excited to see him reunite with his brother in Atlanta. And then they took Zach Branch at number 79 overall. And Zach Branch is an interesting one because we've really only seen him catch screens. And maybe not only, but it's been like more than 50% of his catches came at or behind the line of scrimmage. And he's not really this polished route runner at all. We really haven't seen him get the opportunity to run any type of a complete route tree. But of course, as many say every year, because of his movement skills as a whole, you'd like to think that he would be able to improve as a route runner and run a more complete route tree. But we haven't seen that. And there are players in the past who have had that type of description that have not been able to improve as a route runner, even though you think that they would be able to. I mean, he's a special player with the ball in his hands. I don't know if he's as much of a burner as some would indicate. I didn't really see that. I think he is fast, and he ran well at the combine, and he's quite light as well. I think he's sub 180 pounds. But I don't know if I see true burner speed. I think he is explosive with the ball in his hands, and he's so shifty. And that's, what creates these massive plays, especially as a return man. I don't know how much we're going to see of that at wide receiver. There's some development to go in order to get to that point. But he is a very good athlete. He is a super fun player to watch. And there will be opportunity in this Atlanta receiving room because there are not many other guys that are proven or good, really, unfortunately. Kendall Daniels in the 4th, I thought was a really fun pick. If you saw this guy's highlight tape, you'd think he's about the best player in the draft. He's got very good overall size and athleticism. He's like a hybrid linebacker, safety, edge. But in the 4th round, at 134 overall, you're so comfortable taking that type of a player because you know he's going to make an impact on special teams. You know he's going to be a good sub-package player. And you can also make some arguments about Harold Perkins as well. He was kind of positionless, unfortunately. Too small to be an edge rusher, but he's at his best as a blitzer, but not big enough to play linebacker. Doesn't really have the movement skills in space to be any type of a slot player or safety. So it's what do you do with Harold Perkins? Because downhill, he's quite good, but especially as a blitzer, but he's not big enough to play in the box consistently and as a linebacker. So, man, what do you do with Harold Perkins? In the 6th round at 215 overall, that's when you can afford to take that chance and find out, because he's going to be capable of making some big plays. It's just, what are you going to do on a down-to-down basis? That's the big question with Harold Perkins. But he and Kendall Daniels, I think, are two players that will play an impact for Atlanta in some capacity. They also brought in Ontario Thompson and Ethan Onianwa, a tackle from Ohio State I was not familiar with. So I can't give you the big write-up on him, but he's somebody that you'd imagine competes to make the roster. That's what's happening at the end of the 7th round. Can never have enough depth on the offensive line. And a lot of these day 3 guys are just going to be wait and see. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens always do well in the draft. It's part of why good teams stay good. They had a lot of picks, and they got some really nice players, starting with Venga Ioane, the guard from Penn State. He'll be an instant plug-and-play starter, probably at left guard, and I think he's going to end up being a really good player. He's rock solid in pass pro. He's a mauler in the run game. He was just the best all-around guard in every phase. I think you can point to some guys who maybe are better pure run blockers, but don't have the same level of pass pro ability that Venga Ioane does. And you can point to guys that are very good in pass pro that don't have the same type of drive in the run game that Ioane does. So he kind of just does everything very well. That's why he's a guard selected at number 14 overall. You look at the Ravens' interior offensive line, it's really, really bad, right? You lose Tyler Linderbaum. Thankfully, you were able to bring in a great veteran like John Simpson. But, and I say great vet, I mean, he's a proven guy that can be a plus starter for you at the position. So that's good. If you're going to try and hide your center, which we don't know who that's going to be yet, really. I guess he's currently on the roster, but it's not Tyler Linderbaum. You can protect that center with 2 very good guards on either side of him, and that's what you're doing here. So I love the pick of Ioane at 14, even though it might seem high for a guard. And then you brought it back with Zion Young at 45, who has overall quite good size. I think about 6'5", 260 or so pounds, maybe a little bit lighter than that. And he's a very stout player against the run. He's got some pass rush upside as well, although we haven't fully seen that. Jacoby Lane at number 80. Jacoby Lane is an interesting one for me because I recognize the ball skills are elite, but he does have some weird concentration drops. And I just don't know if he's going to separate in the NFL. And you can make a really similar case for Elijah Surratt, who I think does a really good job getting open against zone, but doesn't really separate against man at all. And he's not particularly explosive, but he's physical, he's tough, he makes the tough catches. It's just, did the Ravens add a receiver that's actually capable of getting open? That's going to end up being the question. Hibner's a plus athlete. You lost a lot at tight end this offseason, so bringing in Hibner to compete makes a lot of sense. But one of my favorite picks they made was Chandler Rivers in the 5th round. I think he's a day 1 starting slot corner. He's undersized, sure, but he's physical, he's fast. He does everything you'd want a day 1 starting slot corner to do. And to get him at 162, I really couldn't believe that he was available. I still feel like slot corner is the most disrespected position in the draft that there is, because these guys are instrumental to great defenses that we've seen in the NFL. Josh Cuevas isn't flashy at all, but he catches the ball well. And again, like Hibner is, I guess, the higher upside tight end, where Cuevas is just going to be, you know, a steady tight end 2 type of player, maybe over the course of his career, even if the numbers are never absolutely insane. These are the type of guys on the team that help the team win. And then you took a chance on Adam Randall in the 5th. He's a former 4-star, high 4-star receiver recruit to Clemson that shifted to running back. He's gigantic. He's like 6'3", 230 pounds, and was productive as a runner for Clemson this past season, but can also catch the ball, right? So if you're trying to replace Derrick Henry long term with a dart throw, I think Adam Randall is a good dart throw. The odds that he ever becomes close to what Derrick Henry is incredibly low, obviously, but not a bad pickup in 174 with his type of upside. You had to replace Jordan Stout, so you bring in Ryan Eckley from Michigan State. I can't give you the scouting report on a punter. I don't really watch specialists. And then Rayshawn Benny and Evan Bernstein, guard from Northwestern, finished out this draft. I really liked Rayshawn Benny, and even though we've only seen limited reps of him starting, he's got good size, he's got good overall athleticism, and I'm curious why he fell all the way to 250, because I thought he was a much better player than that. So maybe there's something that I'm missing. I'm sure I could be. These NFL teams, of course, are going to know better than I do on a lot of these things, although not always. But I thought Rayshawn Benny was quite a good player that probably could have gone maybe 50 or 75 picks ahead of this spot, but here he is at 250, and I think represents good depth on the defensive line for a Ravens team that could use that with some injury questions on the interior. I'm going to give the Buffalo Bills a B+. I thought they had a good draft. Thought they came away with some good players. I didn't absolutely love every pick, but getting TJ Parker at 35, who was a first-round type of talent, who had a down 2025, but was a great player in 2024, has very good overall size, 3-down potential, good athleticism. It's just, can he do more than speed to power and long arm as a pass rusher? But he can defend the run. This is a solid player, solid pick at 35. Davison Igbinosun has upside as a boundary corner. That's a very valuable position, and they grabbed him at 62. He's insanely grabby and handsy and is penalty prone, but has good size and athleticism. If you can clean up the technique a little bit and stop him from committing so many penalties, you're going to have a solid starting boundary corner. So at 62, I think that's okay. Jude Bowery in the 4th was one of my favorite day 3 selections in general. So he's a really good athlete, very good overall size. I thought he could have gone earlier because of his upside. And for the Bills, yeah, you look at tackle and it's not necessarily one of the biggest needs, but he does not need to come in and play right away. Maybe they even consider him at guard, but this is a developmental left tackle that can probably end up being a plus player if everything goes well. Now, it might be a bit of a journey to get to that, but he's got that type of potential. Skylar Bell at 125, I think, is awesome. Another day 1 starting slot, but this time on the offensive side of the ball. We talked about, Chandler Rivers at corner, but this is a day 1 starting slot receiver. Now you look at the Bills, they already have that in Khalil Shakir, but Bell has good overall size for a slot. Now, can he play Z? That's going to end up being the question. I think he's got pretty decent route polish. He catches the ball well. He tested really well. He had a great offseason. I mean, Skylar Bell is really, really good value at 125. Caleb Elarms-Orr with the very next pick has experience playing all over for TCU, off the edge, off the ball. So he's probably going to be a sub-package player or special teams impact player. And you can say probably the same thing about Jalen Kilgore, who is listed as a safety, but I think profiles more as a slot corner. He's a bigger bodied player, so I understand listing him as a safety, but I think he's best in the nickel. And I think the Bills could certainly look to upgrade there. So he'll earn his way into potentially being a starter one day. It is a long road for any player taken on day 3 to become a starter, but he does a really great job of using his length in coverage to make plays on the ball. He comes down and hits. He's a fun player to watch. Zane Durant at 181 is undersized, but incredibly explosive and athletic. Is that enough to work in the NFL? We're going to have to see, because he's not going to end up being a 3-down player at 280 pounds. It's just not going to happen on the interior. He's definitely shorter, but he is explosive. So is he going to be somebody that plays, more than, 15 snaps a game? I don't know. But the athletic upside gives you something on 3rd downs at least. And he might just be too quick for interior offensive linemen to handle at times. Toriano Pride, I thought, was a nice pickup at 220. Another guy that I think profiles more as a slot, and maybe they move Kilgore to safety and they try Pride in the slot again. Can never really have enough good defensive backs. Tommy Doman from Florida and Armaj Reed Adams I thought was actually quite good value at 241. This was someone I thought probably could have gone at the top of day 3, but because he is a 6th-year senior, as you see written here, maybe you don't think there's enough upside there. So we'll see. It's good depth to potentially add. And on day 3, with one of the final picks of the 7th round, adding depth on the offensive line, not a problem. I thought the Carolina Panthers very sneakily had one of the better drafts of any team. They had 7 picks, and I think they drafted a good player with all of them. Now, Jackson Kuwach I didn't really know very much about before today, but starting with Monroe Freeling, it's just great value at 19 because of the upside there. He's got elite size and athleticism. His movement skills out in space are absolutely phenomenal. He's a bit raw as a prospect, but he does not have to play right away. You sign Rasheed Walker to a 1-year deal. I've got questions about what the Panthers will do with Ike Ekwonu for the future, coming back from a major injury. You have Taylor Moton. Freeling is basically going to be redshirted right away, but the upside is that of a premium starting left tackle, and that's hard to find at 19. We'll see if they can get to that. Unfortunately, it looks like Tershawn Wharton was kind of a bust signing for the Panthers, but they go out and get Lee Hunter at 49, who at his best can be a dominant level player. This is really a nose tackle that has flashed as a pass rusher, but is a big-bodied player that is capable of being explosive at 330, shed blocks. They have Derek Brown, who's already a monster. Adding Lee Hunter next to him, I think, could end up being one of the better combos in the league. Unfortunately, Turk Wharton has been kind of a miss. Chris Brazzell at 83. This is when you take a shot on a player like Chris Brazzell, who's 6'5", 200 pounds, coming from the deep choice offense at Tennessee. It's always a real question about how these guys are going to translate to an NFL offense, but I think Brazzell has shown you that he's actually capable of sinking his hips and snapping off some of these routes and getting open in the intermediate areas of the field. He's not just a guy that runs down the field, but he can also do that. I think he does a really great job of going outside of his frame and catching the football, something that you can't necessarily say about a Jalen Hyatt or even a Dante Thornton, who should have a big catch radius, but Brazzell was somebody that I just noticed was consistently catching the ball off of his frame with his hands. That's what you want to see. And apparently there were a couple reasons why he might have dropped in this draft related to character, but the Panthers wanted to add a playmaker. They said that. Brazzell can be that. And based on the current receivers they have there, Jalen Coker, Teteroa McMillan, guys that can really dominate in the intermediate areas of the field, Brazzell can be this field stretcher that creates opportunities for those guys underneath because of what he does to stress a defense vertically. Will Lee, another really physical, kind of grabby corner that has made some plays but is raw as a prospect. He's got really good size. He's a decent athlete. Adding more depth to the cornerback room at 129, I think is good. Can never have enough depth at defensive back in general. Will Lee, I think, is a nice pickup at 129. And some people were hating on the Sam Hecht pick here at 144. You can make a strong argument that he was the best center in the class. And I know you brought in a center in free agency, but Hecht is going to end up being your starting center, I would imagine, within a couple of years. In the 5th round, that's excellent. Zakee Wheatley at 151 is excellent. He's a bigger safety with range. He's a good athlete. He's a playmaker for that Penn State defense that was kind of lacking them for the most part here last year. He was the real bright spot that you could find. And then, of course, Kuwach in the 7th, I imagine would compete as a rotational player, more likely on special teams if he makes the roster. But that's a really excellent top 6. I'm going to give the Bears a B. Maybe this is a bit harsh. A B is still a good grade. I thought they did well. They didn't hit on everybody. Xavier Thomas at 89 is one of the more perplexing picks I've seen since the Bears took Velus Jones in the 3rd. I mean, I really just can't believe this. There was a thought that he was going to get drafted because of how athletic he is. I mean, his straight line speed is phenomenal. As a receiver prospect, he's not great. I mean, he's not the best route runner. He doesn't have the best hands, doesn't catch the ball outside of his frame the way you'd want from a receiver, because he's a smaller statured guy. It seemed early at 89, and I don't love that. But I love Thieneman at 25. I thought he was a player that could have gone earlier. I think he was the best free safety in the class. He's got range for days. This is what the Bears were looking for to replace Kevin Byard. I mean, this is, I think a phenomenal selection here at the back end of the first round. The league doesn't value safety, and then you see a team with a bad safety with no range over the top, and you're like, damn, we could probably have used Dylan Thieneman. And I wonder if the Panthers are going to be regretting passing on him, and I wonder especially if the Vikings are going to regret passing on him. I think Thieneman would have been a major upgrade for either of those teams. Logan Jones at 57, I thought was the best center in the draft. There was a thought he was going to go on day 3. I'm happy to see him go at 57 overall. I think he's worth this pick. Drew Dahlman kind of shock retires on you, but Logan Jones, I think, can step in and be the starter right now. I know they brought in Garrett Bradbury. I don't really particularly care. Maybe he starts right away, but I think Logan Jones has a real chance to be their starting center right now. He's an awesome player, awesome athlete. Sam Roush is a player I like a lot. Yeah, he's more of a blocking tight end, but with his size also comes great athleticism. And I think he's someone that moves really well. And even though the hands are potentially a bit of a work in progress, I thought, at least at the combine, he caught the ball naturally and he looked quite good. But apparently the drop rate is a little bit higher than what you'd want it to be. The only thing I think you can kind of not like about the Roush pickup is the fact that the Bears already have Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet. And Roush, best case scenario, is tight end 3. But there are always injuries. Having a third tight end that can come in and block and catch the ball, I think, is a valuable thing. We talked about Xavier Thomas. I think Malik Muhammad was really great value in the 4th round. He's got the potential to be a boundary starter, but I think also could find a home in the slot. I know currently that position is filled, but Muhammad's a good player. I think he's got starter upside. Keyshawn Elliott and then Jordan Vanderberg finished out this draft. Overall, I thought it was a really solid draft for Chicago, and if not for picks in the 3rd round, I like Roush. I really do. But if not for, their 3rd round with, Xavier Thomas, who I'm not particularly high on as a receiver, is that too early for a return man? I think it is a little bit, but the Bears are close. Why is this grade not even higher? I thought they really needed to improve their ability to stop the run. They didn't do that. Thought they really needed to improve their pass rush. They didn't do that. So I guess I must be missing something with this Bears defensive line. But based off of how they performed last year, they're awful. And we'll see what 2026 looks like. Moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to give them a B-. I thought they came away with a pretty good draft despite not having a tremendous amount of picks, and of course none in the 1st round because they decided to trade for Dexter Lawrence from the New York Giants. Now, I think if you factor in Dexter Lawrence into the draft class, it obviously looks a lot better. And it's a good draft class overall. We'll talk about the players here in a moment. But Lawrence, I think you've got to factor in overall. Is he actually a part of the draft class? No, but he was way better than any player they were going to find at number 10 overall for this defense that desperately needed help on the interior D-line, and to add his type of run stuffing and pass rushing ability from 0 or 1 technique, it's unbelievably hard to find. So I'm in favor of that for Cincinnati. Obviously, I'm a Giants fan, despite the name, but I thought that it was probably a win-win for both sides. Sucks because Dexter Lawrence has been such a great player for the Giants, unfortunately in a really bad era of Giants football. He didn't want to be there. He wanted more money. The Bengals were willing to pass, up on anybody they would take at 10 to trade number 10 to the Giants. Like, is it a lot to give up? Yeah, but he's really good, and you really needed that. And there wasn't a player that made any sense. So I think that's a win-win. Cassius Howell was the 41st pick. And to me, this was kind of an interesting one because, and I like Cassius Howell. I liked him a lot more at 41 than I would have in the first round. But they just signed the athletic speed rush in Boye Mafe. Howell is undersized. His length is a question. I'm not sure he's a 3-down player, but he doesn't have to be. And you can kind of get more around that at 41. I mean, he is a firecracker off the edge. And I think I haven't seen anybody orchestrate the ghost move as well as he has, outside of course, Brian Burns, who has made it really popular in the NFL. Howell's a really good speed rusher to add at 41. This team needs to put more pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and you're playing in the AFC North. You got Lamar Jackson. Cassius Howell hopefully should help contain him at some level, get him on the ground. He's a tough guy to corral, but when you have Cassius Howell's speed, it's a little bit tougher to get away. Takario Davis is a player I like. I know he's a little bit stiffer than some would like with his movement skills, but he's a gigantic corner. I mean, he's 6'4". He's got very good ball skills in general, even better than Ephesians Prysock, certainly so. And he doesn't really get beat. Now, is he going to be limited as a player potentially schematically? Yeah, maybe so. But with his combination of size and speed, at least straight line speed, I think he's going to find a role. He's physical, and he's been a playmaker, especially at Arizona. I thought he had a chance to be a first-round pick coming off of one of those seasons and transfers to Washington, and I thought was a solid player that really didn't get a ton of love over the course of this draft season. But I liked him, and I'm glad to see that at least somebody else in the NFL did too. They took him at 72. He was kind of more talked about like a day 3 player, and I thought he was worth going in this range. And I know not everybody loves him as a prospect, but I am a fan. And then Connor Lew, an incredibly discounted pick here for, again, arguably the best center in the draft. I think there were really 3 that could have that type of label on them. I thought it was Hecht, Lew, and Jones, of course, who the Bears grabbed, who we just talked about, and Hecht as well. Lew is a really, really good player. And if not for a torn ACL, I think he's probably a day 2 pick. He goes here at 128. I think he's going to be their eventual starting center. And this is a nice stash. He's a backup, and then he becomes the starter in a year or 2. I think that's a perfect start of day 3 pick. Colby Young in the 4th. Not especially excited about him. I thought they did need to add a receiver at some point, but there were guys I liked on the board more than Colby Young, and that's okay. And we'll see what he becomes. Brian Parker, I think, is more depth across the O-line. I like Jack Andrews. I think he was a better player prior to transferring to Texas. But you come to Texas, there are a lot of mouths to feed, and the passing offense just wasn't very good at Texas this past season for a long part of the season because the offensive line was so bad for a really significant portion of the season before they kind of figured it out more towards the end. And then, of course, you saw Arch Manning start to carry the offense. We're going to talk more about Arch Manning as we transition into the 2027 draft. He's going to end up being my number 1 overall pick in the way too early 2027 mock draft after not including him at all. I believe in 2026 because I didn't believe he'd had any chance of coming out. People are going to hate on Arch Manning. They're going to talk about the last name. Arch is, I think, the clear front runner to be the first overall pick, factoring that he plays quarterback. Jeremiah Smith is the generational player of next draft class if he decides to declare, which I imagine he does. But it's rare to see a receiver go at number 1 overall. We haven't seen anything since Keyshawn Johnson, maybe 30 years ago. And then Landon Robinson, kind of a fun pick in the 7th round. Another academy man. We saw Eli Heidenreich as well. We'll talk about him more when we get to the Steelers. But he's a fun interior D lineman that is undersized but fairly athletic and could work his way in as a rotational player if he makes the team. And I think the Cross-State Browns get an A+. Now, part of this is that the Browns had a ton of picks, but they had clear holes on the roster heading into this, and I think they did a really exceptional job of patching up those holes, taking chances on good athletes with high upside, and also taking players that can help them now. Spencer Fano, after a trade down from 6, picked him up at 9. That's the player you were going to take anyway at 6. To get extra value for him, that's a win. He's going to move over to left tackle. He's got the movement skills, I think, to stick out there. The arm length is maybe a little bit of a question, but it's not so devastating that it can't work. And his play strength is also not exceptional, but his movement skills are so elite. The footwork is so great. I like him. I think he's going to be a good pro. I hope he can stick at left tackle. If he can't, I think he's going to end up being a good interior offensive lineman. Or maybe they move him back over to right tackle. He played left tackle at Utah. Then when Caleb Lomu came in, he shifted over to right tackle. But I think he could still play guard or even center. But with the Browns, they're going to want him to stick at left tackle. DeJuan Jones, I think, is too unreliable. And then at 24, Casey Concepcion fell to them. He's got some hands problems, and I don't think he's the best contested catch player in the world. He just isn't, and I don't know if that's ever going to be him. But he offers so much more as a route runner and as a ball carrier that I think you can get by the fact that he's not going to be an elite contested catch guy more than likely. He is not going to be slot exclusive, but he can thrive in the slot. Looks like my assistant GM, the cat, thinks he's going to be slot exclusive. But no, with his ability to get open against press on the outside, that's the big thing that stops a lot of these guys. Is, yeah, you're small, but can you get open on the outside? No, because you're lacking the strength in order to do so, or the quickness, or the hands to beat press. Casey Concepcion can beat press. So I don't really think that's a problem. And then when you factor in just how exceptional he is with the football, he's going to be a big-time playmaker, I think, with the Browns. And I think the slot is actually going to be a fairly good home for him. Denzel Boston, you want to talk about the antithesis of Casey Concepcion. This is your big-bodied, contested jump ball receiver. That's what the Browns needed to add. And I didn't really get the Denzel Boston love in the first round, but I thought that this is the classic top of the second round type of receiver that may never be absolutely elite, but if Denzel Boston becomes Michael Pittman Jr., you're pretty excited about that outcome. You know, I don't know that he's ever going to separate at an elite level, but he catches the ball well. He can be a threat in the red zone. He can be a consistent chain mover for them. And going into this draft, I'm like, the Browns need to upgrade tackle. They need to upgrade receiver. Really, their O-line in general needed work. They've done that. Through their first 3 picks of the draft, receivers really no longer much of a question because you added 2 very talented receivers with differing skill sets. At number 58, they got another potential first-round talent. I thought he was going to end up more likely in the second round. I didn't include him in my final first-round mock draft, but I thought that at 58, he started to be a steal. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren may end up being best near the line of scrimmage, but I think he's got the range to absolutely excel in the 2 high. I don't know that he's ever going to be the single high center field type of player, but he's got very good range, and you saw that if you watched him at Toledo. He is a thumper and enforcer over the middle of the field, and there were times I saw that playing at Toledo, receivers were very aware of where McNeil-Warren was on the field. You started to see people getting afraid to catch the ball around Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. He's that level of enforcer. He's got great size, and he's got a great ability to create turnovers. Not only just with his ball skills, but this is a guy who punches the football out pretty routinely as well, like we talked about with the Falcons and Avion Terrell. Austin Barber was a player they moved up for. You know, he's got experience at left tackle. And I think this is one of those cases of maybe if Spencer Fano doesn't work out, if we can develop Austin Barber, maybe he's the left tackle. But I think he's drafted as a depth piece and maybe a future starter. I don't mind it. Parker Brailsford, depth on the O-line, but I actually really like Justin Jefferson. I was kind of surprised to see him go ahead of Deontay Lawson, a different Alabama linebacker, but I like Justin Jefferson. He's a little light for a linebacker, a little small, but he's kind of one, of these hybrid guys that I think can really thrive on special teams. He's a really good athlete. Joe Royer was incredibly productive at Cincinnati. I really think he is starting tight end upside. That's really good at 170. Taylon Green at 182 is a generationally gifted athlete that has not yet mastered the quarterback position, and few do. He is very raw as a quarterback prospect. Do not let any stat fool you. He is very, very raw. He does have a cannon of an arm, and he is an exceptionally gifted athlete. I really think that if he were to work hard at becoming a receiver of some sort, that would be an ultimately very good role for him. I don't know if it's going to happen at QB, but at 182, it's worth the shot to see if you've got something, because the athletic upside is so enormous. Like Anthony Richardson was the 4th overall pick, and I liked him as a prospect more than a lot of people. Obviously, has not worked out up to this point. But if you like Anthony Richardson at 4, which was early, I would not discount that it was early. Why not Taylor Green at 182? Why not? He can be a playmaker, and we'll see if he can develop at quarterback. This is a guy you're going to sit for a couple of years at least. I don't know if he ever becomes a starter. I don't know if he ever starts a game in the league at quarterback. I really think his upside as a receiver could be really, really fun. And then Carson Ryan, I did actually end up watching him. I sent a DM to Dane Brugler about him because I'm like, you know what? There might be something here down the board. He excels at forcing missed tackles. He has fairly good size overall. And I just thought he was lacking the juice of an upper echelon type of tight end prospect. He just doesn't really move without the football at a super high level. He kind of looks like a fullback at times on the field, and then you look him up, and he's like somehow 6'4", 6'5", 250. Yeah, he was listed at 6'4", but his combine measurement said 6'3", which makes a bit more sense. He kind of looks like an H-back a bit when you watch him play, but his ability to make people miss in the open field, I do not think should be discounted. For the 248th pick in the draft, you can do a lot worse than him. And is he going to be tight end? Is he going to be kind of this move piece? Is he going to be a fullback of sorts? You might have some type of piece. I think this is your, if Harold Fannin gets hurt, we got Carson Ryan, you can do worse. It's not ideal, but you got something there. And I think the Dallas Cowboys get an A. They didn't have many picks, but with the picks they had, I think they did well. Caleb Downs at number 11, you can make the case that he's a top 2, 3, 4 player in this draft. And at a position the Cowboys desperately needed to upgrade. He's a team leader. He's a great communicator. He reads the game so well. I think he's at his best near the line of scrimmage as well. But we'll see where Dallas ultimately thinks he should play, because they kind of have Marquise Bell that I think has been used in the way that I would probably prefer to use Caleb Downs if I were the Cowboys, and maybe that's just what ends up happening. Maybe he plays over Caleb or over Marquise Bell. We'll see. They get Malachi Lawrence at 23. I really hated that they traded with the Eagles to let the Eagles get Mekhi Lemon. I get that they got picks down the board that they turned into Devin Moore and LT Overton, but I hated that they let the Eagles get Mekhi Lemon. I think that is bad to give a division rival a potential star receiver who I like a lot. And then Jayshawn Barham at 92. I thought he was going to end up going earlier because you look at the overall size and athleticism, it's fairly elite. And he has experience playing off the edge, sure, at Michigan, but I really knew him better as a linebacker because that's what he was at Maryland when I first popped on my radar. And then he transfers to Michigan, still looks pretty good as a linebacker, and then they move him to the edge. And I thought he handled that pretty well as well. I think there's untapped potential here, but what's he going to do? Is he going to end up being a hybrid player? Is he going to play mostly off the edge and just be depth? Because he's not going to play over Malachi Lawrence, you'd think, because you got him at 23. You have Donovan Ezeraku. You brought in Rashawn Gary. A lot of edge rushers in that room now. Is he your developmental guy? And does he have like a Jalix Hunt type of career, if you look at him in Philadelphia? Or did they try to use him as a hybrid player? Drew Shelton, I thought, was one of the better tackles available at 112. Devin Moore is a high upside type of pick because he's got really great size. He's a good athlete, has been unable to stay healthy at Florida. But this is the type of corner the Cowboys have really gravitated towards recently, which is the big-bodied athlete. And I'll tell you, it's worked out in some ways. They've had good ball production at corner, even though these guys have been like a little hit or miss at times. LT Overton is one of the more interesting players in the draft for me because he was a player a couple of years ago when draft eligible that I thought could be a first round type of player, and we just haven't really seen that. He's kind of a tweener. Is he more of an inside player? Can he stick on the edge? Kind of a hybrid, but sometimes that type of build just doesn't work out. And sometimes you can talk about, you know, the fun upside of a guy that, oh, is he an inside player? Is he an outside player? Can he do both? Sometimes they can't do either in the NFL, so you worry about that. And then I didn't watch Anthony Smith at East Carolina, but obviously at 218, this is a player that's going to fight to make the roster. We'll see if that happens. Maybe a core special teamer. Denver Broncos. I'm going to give them a C. You know, it's already a really talented roster, and of course, they didn't have many picks. The first pick they made in the draft was Tyler Onyedem at 66 overall, but they traded their first for Jalen Waddle. That's a really good return. Jalen Waddle is such a fun player, one of my favorites in the league, so I, of course, like the Broncos going out to make that happen. And then, yeah, Onyedem I thought was one of the better interior defensive linemen available. You look at his combination of size and athleticism, it's obvious they want to use him to replace John Franklin Myers. That's going to be tough to do. One of the better interior defensive linemen in terms of rushing the quarterback in the league. Onyedem is not just going to be able to jump in and be that replacement, but that's what they want him to become. And I thought he was good value at 66. A lot of people like Jonah Coleman. He's an older running back prospect that doesn't really have the most juice, but can run in between the tackles. And he really bulked up, but also got into shape. He was, when he got to Washington, was not really particularly in shape, but a bigger running back. Now he's kind of added muscle, and I think that showed in his play at Washington. He had a really nice season, and they're looking for someone that can run in between the tackles better than what they currently have, and I think Jonah Coleman fits the bill there. And I kept talking about, if you watched my day 2 coverage of the draft, I kind of expected the Broncos to be a shock running back team with their first pick. Obviously, it's not where it ended up going, but with their second pick, you saw Jonah Coleman go to Denver. Cage Casey in the 4th, I thought was decent value. Whether or not he sticks a tackle or moves inside to guard remains to be seen, but it's good depth. Justin Joly is a player I liked a lot. I think he was one of the better tight ends in this draft class, at least as a receiver, and he was not one of the first tight ends taken. But if you're telling me that some of the tight ends taken above him were going to be taken above him prior to the draft, I would say that's probably a mistake. So I like Jolie. I think he's got the potential to be really successful in this offense. You know, Miles Scott was not somebody I'd watched at Illinois, but 7th round pick. A lot of these guys are just going to be fighting to make the roster, as I've said, for a lot of these players. But you got to remember, that's what it is. When you're a 7th round pick, one of the, you know, players taken past number 200, it's going to be tough to make the roster. And this is already a good roster. Dolan Bentley was very productive at Utah. They bring in Red Murdoch. This was a team that didn't really have a ton of holes. And the one that kind of popped up, they've tried to replace with Onyedem, and they bring in Jalen Waddle. I think the Broncos are still going to be a real contender with one of the better defenses in the league, and they've tried to boost up the offense with the trade for Jalen Waddle. I think they've got big-time potential. Give the Lions a B+. I think they did well. You know, another team that didn't have a lot of picks, but Blake Miller to come in at right tackle and moving Penei Sewell over to left tackle, that's good. Miller is reliable. He's not going to miss starts, or at least he didn't at Clemson. He doesn't really get beat. He can move people a bit in the run game. He's just a really solid prospect. Did 17 feel maybe a touch early? But he's just because he's not the super high upside guy doesn't mean he's not necessarily worth the 17th overall pick. I think he's a really solid player. And by moving Penei Sewell over to left tackle, I think you're going to get the most possible value out of him. And we've obviously seen him do that. That's why he was drafted so highly. He was a dominant left tackle at times at Oregon. I mean, he just was unbelievable. I like Derek Moore a lot. I felt like I was higher on Derek Moore than a lot of people were, but The Lions come out and take him at 44. I think he's got true 3-down potential. He is a rugged power rusher who can push the pocket. And I think this is the type of edge that the Lions typically like. I'm maybe more surprised I didn't connect the dots to Derek Moore to Detroit more often. Jimmy Rolder in the 4th, Keith Abney in the 5th, Kendrick Law in the 5th. I thought they had a really good day 3. Skylar Gill-Howard was part of that big Texas Tech defense, and Tyree West was not somebody I'd watched exclusively. But, man, I want to talk about these 2 5th-round picks because I liked them a lot. Keith Abney is maybe a bit undersized. He maybe doesn't have the elite athleticism, but he's so tough, competitive, physical. He's so good at driving down on the football and making plays on the ball underneath. That's where he really, really stands out. If you look at every slant attempted on Keith Abney, his success rate is unbelievable. You cannot catch slants on this guy. It's one of the tougher routes to defend in football, and Keith Abney has no problem with it whatsoever. Will he potentially struggle to carry routes vertically in the NFL? That's maybe true, and that's why he goes in the 5th round. But in the 5th round, I thought this was exceptional value. And then Kendrick Law at receiver is a really exciting prospect because his movement skills are elite. He's such a good athlete. He's so fun to watch with the ball in his hands. This could be a special type of playmaker or returner for Detroit. Yes, there's some development to be done, but it's a high upside pick in the 5th round. Abney and Kendrick Law back-to-back, not at 157 and 158, but 157 and 168, back-to-back picks for the Lions. Maybe 2 of my favorite back-to-back picks considering where they happen in the entire draft. I love this for Detroit. The Packers usually don't get this high of a grade for me, I feel like. They get an A- this year, and they really didn't have any high picks. Remember, they packaged a lot to go out and get Micah Parsons, and I think that's a deal that is going to end up being really nice for them because of how talented Micah is as a player. They really needed to upgrade outside corner. And Cisse, I think, can play boundary or field. He is an exceptional athlete. Maybe a little bit raw as a cornerback prospect, and that's why he's not, going to end up in the 1st round conversation. But I thought he had a chance to go in the 1st round. Maybe that final pick of the 1st to Seattle. And then I thought, okay, he'll be gone probably in the top, 40 or 45 picks. But he lasts just a little bit longer. Corner lasts just a little bit longer on the board for Green Bay. They didn't have to move up. And I think they just found themselves in such a nice position where they're like, we're just going to take the best player. Maybe it's an interior defensive lineman. Maybe it's an outside corner. The slot cornerback position is great. So they didn't really even need to consider that at all. They really needed boundary. That's why they cut Nate Hobbs, because Bullard is such a good player. But Brandon Cisse fell right into their laps. You have a high upside, great athlete at a super valuable position. You didn't waste any draft capital to go up and get him. You just stayed where you were, and you picked the best player that you could pick for your team. And I think that really was Brandon Cisse at that spot. Chris McClellan at 77. This was a player I really wanted the Giants to target. Ends up going a little bit earlier than where I was expecting him to go, or I was hoping he would fall to. But this is going to be a really nice rotational piece for the Packers. He offers a lot of great size. I think he is a good athlete for that size, and he can affect the game really in a number of different ways. I feel like if you were looking for bigger bodied interior defensive linemen, it's tough to find a guy like Chris McClellan down the board who is a better athlete than a lot of these other guys like a Dante Corleone or, a Tim Keenan, for example. I think McClellan was clearly in like the next tier of interior defensive linemen after Kristen Miller and after, pick a guy at the top there. It was, Lee Hunter, Caleb Banks, of course, Caden McDonald. I'm not going to name everybody, but it was the established kind of top tier of interior defensive linemen that were expected to go anywhere from like 25 to 40. Peter Woods in there as well, of course, who ends up being a 1st-round pick. McClellan was in the next tier, and to get him at 77 I thought was great, and then denied Dennis Sutton at 120. I'm not a tremendous fan of the tape, to be honest, but he's got really good size, and he's a really great athlete, and he has made some plays for Penn State. He's just a little bit inconsistent. But at 120, that's where you take the shot on the guy. Like, that's great. I thought he was probably going to go a lot earlier. You know, third round, I thought he could even sneak into the second. They get him at 120. Then Burton, I'm not going to say he's going to end up being a starter for them at center. He wasn't my favorite Kentucky offensive lineman in this class, but I thought he was good, and I did watch the Kentucky offensive line. Damani Jackson is a former 5-star recruit, probably going to end up on the boundary. His college career was a little bit more up and down. Started at USC, ends up at Alabama, and was not the dominant player that the first start of his name would suggest. It's not exactly how that's spelled, but work with me here. And then Trey Smack, the third kicker out of Florida, arguably the best kicker in this draft. It's a position where, you know, you don't really notice the guy until they start screwing up. And having a guy that can be consistently really solid, that's what you're hoping from Trey Smack. You do notice the truly elite ones, but a lot of the time it's just, I can't believe this kicker missed again. And Trey Smack has been consistently smacking them through the uprights for the Gators. He's a really good kicker. So he was in that conversation for kicker one. Dominic Zavada may be in there as well, who went undrafted. But Smack, worth the draft pick if you can get security at one of the sneaky, more valuable positions compared to how a lot of people view it. They're always going to lead the team in points scored. It's important that this guy's consistent. The Houston Texans get a B- from me. I thought it was a pretty nice class compared to how a lot of people viewed it. And yeah, is Marlon Klein at 59 maybe a bit earlier than I expected him to go? Yeah, of course. Tight ends were flying off the board at a level I simply couldn't believe. But Klein at least has really good size and athleticism. Like, these are the players you take chances on, maybe a little bit early for it, but at least there's, you know, extreme athletic upside. Caden McDonald was in play at 28. They trade down. Well, excuse me, they trade up, and then they trade up again for Caden McDonald. So they trade up for Keelan Rutledge, and some people are not super thrilled with that, but this is one of the better interior offensive linemen in the draft. I don't know if he's going to play guard or center for the Texans, because they didn't come out of this draft with a center. I think the idea is that Rutledge is probably going to play center right away and be their day one starter at the position. And he is a physical mauler. He moves so well in space as well. I mean, I saw him at the combine for the first time, especially moving through some of these drills, and he looked incredible. I mean, he and Fano were on a different level, I had thought. And then you go back and watch Rutledge, and you see how much of a physical finisher he is in the run game, and he's solid in pass pro. If he's their day one starting center at a position they really needed to upgrade, I'm all in at 26. If you would have flipped Rutledge and McDonald, how can you complain about the draft spot? McDonald at 36 ends up being really great value. He was the best nose tackle in this draft. You can't run at this guy. I think he offers some pretty decent pass rush as well from the nose tackle position. It's not going to be elite probably, but in terms of the true nose tackles in this draft, he was probably the best pass rusher, and he's really, really good against the run. I did not watch Fabici. Waiwu, is it a silent N? And Waiwu, not sure, but good depth at guard you're hoping for if you're taking him at 106. Wade Woodaz, I liked at 123. He's a fun linebacker prospect. And then Kamari Ramsey at 141 is great depth. I thought he would end up going a lot higher than this. They finished it out with Lewis Bond and Aiden Fisher, who was productive for Indiana, seemed like the team leader at linebacker. Man, this is kind of a sneaky good class, and I think they upgraded the two biggest positions of need with Rutledge and with McDonald at the top. McDonald jumping into that best defense in the league, what did they need to do? They needed to add a nose tackle, and they needed to get younger. Boom, Caden McDonald. They needed to improve the interior offensive line. Enter Keelan Rutledge. I think he's going to end up playing center because they signed Wyatt Teller. They brought back Ed Ingram. Those are two guards. Does Wyatt Teller get to his former All-Pro self? That's tough to predict, but he should be starting at guard right away. And Rutledge, I think, has a clear path to move inside and start at center. Maybe here's your future starting guard, but for right now, that's kind of what I would project. I think I have to give the Indianapolis Colts an A-. They had a fair amount of picks in this draft, finished with 8, and I thought they really found value outside of the first round in a number of different ways. Of course, you have to factor in that the first round pick is Sauce Gardner. Now, they spent 2 first-round picks to get him, but that's why they don't have their first-round pick in this year's draft. Their first pick was C.J. Allen. You look at the Colts linebacker room, that core is one of the worst in football. Absolutely horrendous. Bringing in C.J. Allen, I don't know if he's necessarily going to be a Mike. I think the skill set is more that of a Will. However, he was the green dot player for Georgia's defense. He was making calls, making adjustments, and this guy is a tackling machine. He also was able to make plays in coverage. He came into the year as a top 15 player for me. Didn't quite finish that high, but I think he is one of the better linebackers in this draft. And to get someone that has the mindset of the linebacker at a position where that matters almost more than any other, and the team leadership and communication at Georgia, of all schools, kind of like the pinnacle of defense in college football, I think C.J. Allen is going to be a tone setter for that defense. And how about go get another tone setter with the big-bodied, big hitter, but also surprisingly good range and surprisingly good playmaking ability and ball skills. A.J. Halsey could end up being a starter at strong safety for them. I mean, I had thought that Emmanuel McNeil-Warren in round 2 would have been exactly what they needed at strong safety. Obviously, they opted to go with C.J. Allen instead, which I think in hindsight is probably the right decision with how linebacker ended up getting drafted and how safety ended up getting drafted. A.J. Halsey at 78, I think, is a really, really solid pickup. And then we talked about the Kentucky offensive line. Jalen Farmer was my favorite of all the Kentucky offensive linemen in this draft. I think he's got starter potential at 113. Continuing to add tone setters to this defense. How about Bryce Betcher? I mean, he knocked his own teammate down in Star Thomas at the Senior Bowl. Obviously, like, you've heard about the baseball background. I'm sure he played baseball at Oregon, but this is just another one of these guys that seems like he was built in a lab to play linebacker from a mindset perspective. He's not afraid to come up and hit, whether you're a big offensive lineman or obviously the ball carrier. George Gums is a highly athletic, long edge rusher from Florida. Maybe some untapped potential there. When he went off the board, I'm like, this is the most classic Chris Ballard pick that he could have made in this draft. I mean, the high RAS score. George Gums in the 5th, though, I don't mind it as much because it seems like instead of taking the highest graded athlete, highest relative athletic score player in this draft, they actually kind of took good athletes who were also good football players. And I think that might be the transition this defense needs to make. Caden Curry was highly productive at Ohio State. Really had a nice stretch down the end of the season there for the Buckeyes. And I think in the 6th, someone that can be a rotational pass rusher for them, not bad. I mean, he was quite good at Ohio State. He's not the same level of athlete that you might expect from that defense, but he was productive. And then Seth McGowan is one of my favorite day 3 running backs. And I had said that going into this draft. He drops maybe a bit because of character concerns, but he was formerly really highly recruited at Oklahoma before, unfortunately, really basically hitting rock bottom. But it seems like he's turned his life around. And when you talk about the size and power and overall athleticism for Seth McGowan, he's got some upside here at the back end of the 7th round. And then Deion Burks, there are just not 254 better players than Deion Burks in this draft class. Not even close. I think he's a day 1 starting slot receiver. And I think when you factor in that, yeah, he's a bit undersized, he might be slot exclusive, he's got great speed. He can catch the football. He's decent after the catch. How did he last this long? It's not rhetorical. I'm wondering, why was Deion Burks on the board at 254? Is there something I'm missing? This was crazy. I'm going to give the Jaguars a D. Honestly, it could be an F. It could be an F. But Emmanuel Pregnon at 88, I think, is what saves this class. I mean, Albert Regis is undersized, but Maybe you're hoping he makes an impact as a rotational pass rusher. Here's the thing. I saw this being theorized about on Twitter, where it's the A.J. Barner effect. Everybody wants A.J. Barner because A.J. Barner's sick. He is a great blocking tight end that has the size, is a good athlete, and has developed as an impact receiver. Everybody wants A.J. Barner. They want to be the Seahawks. That was really the theme of this draft. Nate Borkircher at 56, a blocking tight end, is absolutely insane. He's got no receiving production. I don't care about that so much. Like, if he is a good enough athlete, if you really think he projects as a receiver, you know, you could rationalize taking this guy somewhat early, but I mean, I just can't at 56. I can't, because it's so unknown. And yeah, you can make an argument that, well, you can't just say take him later, because another team could take him, and if you really want him, take him. It's just at 56. This kind of reminds me of when the Bengals got Drew Sample so high, and it's like, how is Drew Sample the pick? He's a blocking tight end, and then he was a blocking tight end in the NFL. He never really developed too much as a receiver. That's what this feels like. 56 is just too early. It's the same deal with a returner in the third round. Based on the value you could get at a more impactful position and premium position, you cannot draft a return man in the third round. I don't care if it's Devin Hester. Maybe if it's Devin Hester, but you need to be able to impact the game in a more meaningful way. I know the argument is, well, they can turn a touchdown out of a return out of nowhere. The best return man of all time has like 14 touchdowns. I get it's a field position game, but it isn't worth a premium pick. So I've got to come down big on that. Jalen Husky wasn't somebody I had watched, but went back and looked into him, and it seems like he actually could be a decent selection at 100. So he might be lacking the athleticism to go higher, but he actually does have good ball skills, and he's been a playmaker for Maryland. And then it's like, pick your choice between Wesley Williams, another tight end, and Tanner Koziol, Josh Cameron, CJ Williams, Zach Durfee, Parker Hughes. It seemed like they went as far away from where they could have gone compared to where others seem to like players, and they just took whoever. And that's not to downplay what some of these players might be able to become. It's just, if you look to and talk to people that seem to really know what they are talking about and have been doing this for a long time, they didn't really like any of these players within hundreds of picks on a supposed big board compared to where the Jags actually got these guys. And even if you look at like the consensus big board of draft analysts, it wasn't close either. I mean, it's just like, how are they possibly taking Wesley Williams at 119? Albert Regis maybe is their best pick outside of Pregnon or Husky. At 81, it was one of the higher ones, but I can't get over the blocking tight end Nate Borkircher at number 56. It just seems insane. The Chiefs get an A-. They traded up for Mansour Delane to start their night. Some people were not super excited about the idea of a trade up for Delane. You can just get him at 9. It's just not necessarily guaranteed. I know the Saints really like Delane. I think that's probably the big threat to take him. But if you thought there was a good chance the Saints would take Delane, how often are the Chiefs going to be at 9? You're hoping never again. You're hoping not. This Chiefs team has historically been the best team in the league over the past about decade. They've had a dynasty, and those can come and go pretty quickly. But the reason the Chiefs have stayed on top is because they've drafted well outside of the first round, and they've hit on their picks, and they've signed good complementary players. But really, it's been through the draft, and really all rounds of the draft. The Chiefs have done incredibly well at, I don't want to say just finding value, but definitely developing these players, because they take players that might surprise you, and then they end up being contributors. Part of why I think they're more noticeable contributors is because the Chiefs have been so good overall. So we remember how good some of these players have been, and because they've been forced to play. And it seems like they always rise to the occasion. It could be just like an iron sharpens iron thing, but either way, the Chiefs' development, talent evaluation has just been so good. And you're never in position for a top player in the draft like this. Mansour Delane was CB1, everything considered. I liked Jermod McCoy's tape better in 2024 compared to Delane's 2025, but when you don't factor in potentially career-ending injury risk, Delane is, far and away CB1. He was the first cornerback taken, and then the next one didn't go until number 27 in Chris Johnson. So the NFL thought there was that big of a gap, right? So why not trade up a little bit to secure that player? Kind of a long-winded way to say that. Got Peter Woods at 29. I wouldn't have traded Trent McDuffie. I think Trent McDuffie's incredible, but they preferred to not pay him, kind of reset their money a little bit, clear up a ton of room for the future, and get the first round pick in return. They've drafted Peter Woods, who was my number one player coming into the year. He didn't have that type of season in 2025, and he also maybe doesn't have elite measurables. The length is not absolutely elite, but I think he's got 3-down potential, and of those interior defensive linemen in this class, he's arguably the most explosive and best pass rusher. So for the Chiefs that are looking to put more pressure on the quarterback, of course, as all teams are, but especially on the interior, Peter Woods fits the bill. But they also really needed help off the edge. You look at the current guys in the room, the guys that are expected to be under contract for the next 2 years or more, it's pretty limited after making some roster cuts like cutting Charles Omenihu. I think R. Mason Thomas is absolutely fantastic. He's undersized. He would have been a first-round pick if he was a bit bigger and had a little bit more length overall, but he's got short arms as well. It was kind of a common trend of the edge rushers in this draft, and he didn't really test crazy well. But then you go watch him play, and he's relentless. High motor, explosive. I mean, this was one of the premier speed rushers in this draft, and the Chiefs got him at 40, and they finally kind of, with a premium pick, gone away from their typical type of edge rusher, where it's 6'3" to 6'6", 265 to 280 pounds, not really that great of a pass rusher, but at least they can set the edge. R. Mason Thomas is undersized, and he is a wrecking ball, and he is a rocket off the line. Undersized, speed rusher, but someone that can actually get to the quarterback, and R. Mason Thomas was a game wrecker for Oklahoma. I really think he could have been a first-round pick, and he just goes at 40, so fairly close. I think, again, size and length keep him out of the first round, but the talent is just unbelievable, and the Chiefs kind of go away from their typical guy. Jaden Kennedy in the 4th I liked. Emmett Johnson, some thought was the second best running back in the class. I know that's what Maurice Jones-Drew said. Emmett Johnson was his number 2 running back in the class, so people liked him. I think he's quicker than fast. I question the long speed, but the contact balance is good. The vision's good. He's shown to be somewhat explosive in the short area quickness department, but in the long speed, I really question. I've seen some plays where Emmett Johnson, it's like unhitch the trailer, buddy. He just looks unbelievably slow in the open field. And then I like Cyrus Allen. I think that his best role probably comes in the slot. He was ultra productive for Cincinnati. He was a fun player to watch. Somebody that was expected to go on day 3, so maybe not the ultimate steal here, but just a day 3 wide receiver target I actually liked a lot. And then Garrett Nussmeier in the 7th. Man, I had him mocked fairly high going into the year because he was really good in 2024. He had a chance to go in the first round. He was that level of prospect, and then I know he was hurt. I know you can make a number of different excuses for why the play wasn't good, but Garrett Nussmeier was not very good in 2025. It was a bad year, and he is not maybe the most nimble or quick-footed quarterback, but Nuss has some plays in 2024 where you're like, this guy can be a starter-level quarterback. The arm's pretty good. He does make some questionable decisions at times, but he's also able to make some incredible decisions and throw the ball with a real NFL type throw, reading coverage and reading body language and knowing which player is going to pick up which route and what window he might have. He made NFL throws in 2024 all the time. And then in 2025, when he couldn't really move that well, didn't have his fastball, and then you had the decision-making concerns, it was just a nightmare year. But at 249, I'm happy to take the chance of what I think can be a good backup in the league, if not an eventual starter. I've got to give the Las Vegas Raiders an A. I thought they had a really nice draft overall, and we'll kick things off, of course, with the first overall pick. They made the only selection they could make, Fernando Mendoza. Yeah, I am, of course, slightly biased, naturally, because he's a friend of the channel, but at the same time, how can you not expect Fernando Mendoza to work out? I think he's an underrated athlete with an underrated arm, because it's not like this guy just goes to Indiana, wins the national championship, and then suddenly it's like, yeah, I guess we have to take him at number 1 overall. He was their quarterback. Going into 2025, this was someone that stood out at Cal. Corey Kinnan really put him on the map for me as a potential top draft prospect. You go and watch the tape, you see all the fun things that made him an exciting transfer prospect and someone that could have a big season and become one of the top draft prospects that there were. This was not expected to be a top pick in the draft heading into the year. He was a first-round pick for me in my way too early mock draft, which of course we're going to react to. If you go back and look at Cal, you see the big-time plays with the arm, with the surprising mobility for a 6'5", 230-pound quarterback. I don't think Mendoza is just jack of all trades, master of none. We've talked a lot in the process about how this guy was recruited to Yale, ends up going to Cal Berkeley, was recruited by other Ivies. I mean, I think the mental makeup is phenomenal. I just think Fernando's going to figure out a way to work out. I think he's determined. I think he has the tenacity. I don't think anybody's going to outwork him. These are the traits you want in your starting quarterback of the future. I think when you talk about which position needs to study more than any other, which position needs to want it more than any other, it's the quarterback. And I think mental makeup matters more at this position than any other. And then I don't think he's an average athlete with an average arm. I think for his size, which is 6'5", 230, he moves pretty well. And there's obviously, if you've seen him play, there's never a moment where he's not going to put his body on the line for the team. He's tough as nails. He's willing to stand in the pocket, take hits, and make throws. I know the offense at Indiana was very RPO focused, and that's going to be less of a theme in the NFL. He's not going to work at a shotgun 99% of the time and just back foot balls out. You're going to see 3, 5, sometimes 7-step drops. It's going to be a little different than what he's done recently, but I don't see it being a problem. I just think when you look at the tape, you look at the intangibles, I think Mendoza is just going to be good. How could you take anybody else at number 1? Then they come back with Trayden Stukes at number 38. There was a thought late in the process with a lot of buzz for Trayden Stukes that he would end up being a first-round pick potentially, which I didn't fully see because this is a near 25-year-old prospect with injury history. Those just typically don't go in the first round. But then you look at Trayden Stukes, who's listed as a safety. Slot corner is also certainly a role where he can thrive. He's got great range. He's got great ball skills. He's a phenomenal athlete. You saw that in the testing, but it shows up on tape. That Arizona secondary was so fun. And I didn't even know about Trayden Stukes prior to watching Genesis Smith. Heard about Genesis Smith. I'm like, okay, let me go watch him. One of the top safeties in the draft. First of all, he can't tackle at all. We'll talk about Genesis Smith, but has also phenomenal range. I mean, this Arizona secondary has really been super fun. And they bring in Dalton Johnson as well, who's a part of that in the 5th round, reuniting him and Stukes. But Stukes is an awesome player. I just think one of those guys where you've got the athleticism, but you've also got the playmaking ability. And it's sometimes rare to find guys who have both. When you do, someone with great hand-eye coordination as a defensive back, he finds the ball, He tracks the ball well, and he's got great range. I mean, you factor in that, on the field, mostly receivers are going to come down with the ball if somebody's catching it, in like 50-50 situations. But Stukes, I don't think, is only playing DB because he doesn't have the hands to be a receiver. He's got great ball skills. I think he's going to force and create turnovers for the Raiders. Kieran Crawford in the third. I thought this was a pretty good landing spot for him. I think some, and even the consensus big board, saw this as a reach. I think he was listed as about 65 on Dane Brugler's The Beast. Shout out to Dane Brugler, always doing incredible work for the NFL draft. But Crawford, he was a player he liked quite a bit. You go and watch him, and I thought he was probably the best pass rusher Auburn had this past season. And I like Keldrick Falk, but I think Crawford is a little bit twitchier, a little bit of a better athlete. Obviously not quite as big and can't play the run quite as well as Keldrick Falk, obviously. But he is, I think, a very, very good overall athlete, still developing as a player. But if you can develop him technically, he's got a really high athletic floor. So I'm excited to see what the Raiders are going to be able to get out of him. I think off the edge, first step, athleticism, explosiveness, very critical. You see a guy that also checked a lot of those boxes in Max Crosby, who went fairly late in the draft for where he's actually managed to rise to, which is one of the best edge rushers we've seen over the past half decade at least. Trey Zune in the third. You don't imagine he's going to play center, but he's played guard in the past for A&M, so I imagine he's at least going to be thought of as a potential starter at guard over the next few seasons. I don't think you draft him here if you don't eventually think he can become that, but he's offensive line depth right now. And then maybe the pick of the draft, Jermod McCoy from Tennessee. I love Jermod McCoy. He was my CB1 in this draft, and some people were asking, if he's got all these injury things, and he didn't play in 2025, how could he possibly be your CB1? But you got to remember, I don't have access to all the medical information. I only know what we've been told. And, of course, you knew he didn't play in 2025. You knew he was coming back from the torn ACL. And now there's reports about more issues with the knee and the bone plug might needing to be replaced with other parts of the knee. I mean, it doesn't sound phenomenal. But from what he said and what his doctors supposedly said is that they said he's good to go. He's cleared. He's going to be fine. Now, whether or not team officials think that he will need another surgery, that remains to be seen, and that would knock him out of 2026 if that were to be the case. So teams didn't want to just potentially light a draft pick on fire and take somebody high in the draft and then not have him for an entire season, and he still didn't play all of 2025. So the next time he would to be stepping on the field would be 3 years removed from the last time that we've seen him play. So that's obviously would be bad, but it's not even worst case scenario because it may end up being something that ends his career, which would be devastating. But as I've said, he was my CB1 based purely on the film. And with his ball skills, obviously the athleticism was quite good. We're going to see what that ends up looking like. But elite ball skills for a corner, and has the size, has good overall length. He's got the measurables and the athleticism that I think elevated him above Mansour Delane. Obviously, Delane is a cleaner prospect because he doesn't have the medical red flags. But McCoy at 101, they traded up one spot to get him. I mean, this could be an absolute steal because he can be a starting outside corner and was arguably the best in the entire draft. They got him at 101. Huge question mark, but an incredibly talented player. And then Mike Washington at 122. I think this is where you take the chance on a guy like this because he's a phenomenal athlete. I saw it firsthand when Texas played Arkansas. Arkansas came to town, and I'm like, who is this Arkansas running back? Because he's got size. He's got the juice. This is an explosive player that has not been extremely productive and is a little bit raw as a runner. I mean, he's got to potentially work on vision and running lower. I mean, the pad level gets a bit too high, and he's not the best running back prospect of all time. The athleticism is really fun. I think he does have some overlap skill set wise with Isaac Garendo, who for one reason or another has not worked out in the league, but the athleticism is unbelievable. We'll see about his future, but he could be a fun one-cut style home run hitting running back from time to time. I just don't know what we're going to see consistently out of him, but he doesn't have to start. Could be a fun change of pace guy with Genty. Dalton Johnson, of course, we mentioned. Hezekiah Masses, I think, is good value at 175. Malik Benson at 195 is a really nice pick, and then Brandon Cleveland to finish out this draft class. Benson, I feel like, is kind of redundant with the skill set of Dante Thornton, but basically what Malik Benson does is run by you, and he can space the field, he can stretch it out, maybe create more opportunities underneath, but basically Malik Benson runs one route extremely well, and it's the 9 route, and it is a big calling card for him. He's a long strider, and he's made plays for Oregon. He gets over the top. It's what he does. I'm going to give the Chargers a B. They made some picks I liked. They made some picks I didn't really like, and that's kind of how this goes. And I like Akeem Mesidor 22. I think that, yeah, this is kind of a rare player to see go in the first round because he is 25 years old. He's similar to the player we just talked about in Traden Stukes, where he is older, does have a little bit of an injury history, of course. That's why he's a 25-year-old rookie. And I don't know that it necessarily matters as much because he's going to be an edge rusher. So he's not someone that is underdeveloped physically. And he is so powerful at times, and he rushes with speed at times as well, but he's basically just a dog off the edge. And I think he was the best pass rusher at Miami this past season. I think his hand usage is really advanced. He is 25 years old, so I guess you'd expect it to be a little bit more refined. But I think he's going to be an impact player day one. Now, it'll be interesting to see what the Chargers do because they have Tuli Tuipulotu. They have Khalil Mack for another year. I guess Mesidor is just going to be a rotational player right away, but I think he's going to make a big impact as a pass rusher. Who knows how many snaps per game he's going to get, but I think he will make an impact in those snaps. Jake Slaughter. Ooh, Jake Slaughter at 63 to play guard. I don't know that that's his skill set. We saw it at the Senior Bowl. He played some guard, and it was pretty bad. The play strength I don't think is phenomenal, and you've seen him have some balance issues, and change direction's been a problem. I liked him a bit as a center prospect, but I don't necessarily love him as a guard, and I much would have preferred Emmanuel Pregnon for the Chargers to play guard over Jake Slaughter to play guard. And I think Slaughter would have been a decent center. If this is your center of the future, I think that's a possibility, but I'm curious to see how he works out at guard. I can't imagine he's going to start right away, but for an interior offensive lineman at 63, that would kind of be the expectation that he starts sooner rather than later. Brennan Thompson is a fun pickup. Former Texas Longhorn, and unfortunately other places as well, and then Mississippi State. I won't be mentioning the other place, but he can absolutely fly. He's a burner. You see the speed with and without the football. I think this is a fun pick to, again, stretch the field for the Chargers, and I think that you've seen some of these random speedsters. Jalen Guyton is a name that comes to mind. Hell, even Darius Davis recently. Speed kills, and there's always going to be a role for those guys, and I think more than ever, you're going to see Brennan Thompson have an opportunity because Mike McDaniel's coming in. I think he's going to know how to creatively use Brennan Thompson to not only get him the football, but use him as a weapon with the threat of getting the football. Again, a big part of speed at receiver is what you can do for everybody else. If you have the speed to threaten vertically, you naturally create a little bit more space. Even like John Brown was elite in that capacity and kind of made every other receiver around him better, even though you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, John Brown, one of the best receivers of the 2010s, but he was very valuable to every team he played on. Travis Burke in the fourth was someone I got to pretty late in the process, but he was a late riser because he's got elite size, he's a crazy good athlete, and he's got a chance to be a developmental offensive tackle that earns a starting job in the future. And with all of the injuries you see at the tackle position for the Chargers, Burke may end up playing earlier than you'd want, more than you'd want. So we'll see what happens with that. But he's a fun developmental tackle. The best one in this range, I think, for sure. Genesis Smith in the 4th, mentioned him a bit earlier when talking about the Raiders. He's got phenomenal range. He doesn't know how to tackle. Really no interest in wrapping up. He does look like a heat-seeking missile at times. He'll just throw his shoulder out there. But it's not a strength, unfortunately. He's not someone that I feel good about coming down and making plays on the ball carrier. But his calling card is elite range over the top. That, to me, is valuable because more safeties are capable of coming up and tackling than they are having the range to play from the center field position, essentially, over the top. And I think Smith has the range to do so. Nick Barrett, Logan Taylor, and Alex Harkey finished out the draft class on day 3. I thought they were probably going to take an interior defensive lineman a bit earlier, but they grabbed Barrett in the 5th, and then more interior O-line depth to finish out things at 202 and 206. So we'll see if those guys end up making the team or not. And if they do, we'll see if they can end up becoming starters at some point. I watched Logan Taylor a bit, did not see Alex Harkey, even though I watched Pregnon, wasn't watching the Oregon O-line for Alex Harkey. So someone more in tune with his skill set, let me know down in the comments section below if I'm sleeping on the number 206 pick in the draft. But overall, I liked what the Chargers did. Gonna give the Rams a C. And you know what? I don't typically love Rams draft classes. Sometimes. But I feel like over the course of doing this, the Rams have had some really strange classes. And I feel like mostly I've been right. They've made some weird picks. And that's what they did here. I mean, you are one of the best teams in football. You're maybe a couple guys away from being a Super Bowl team. Thought they needed to upgrade linebacker. You'll note, no linebackers in this draft. So that's kind of brutal already. I thought they really could have used a receiver at some point. And their first one was C.J. Daniels at 197. I actually think good value. I like C.J. Daniels. There's great ball skills, great jump ball ability in general. He's made some phenomenal catches. I prefer C.J. Daniels at 197 to where Jacoby Lane was drafted. Just even though Lane tested way better than I thought. Ty Simpson at 13 doesn't help you win right now. He has only started one season, and half of that season was no good. I like Ty Simpson. He looked great in the first half of the year. We'll see what version of him we get and when we get that version of Ty Simpson, because he's not going to play this year, you'd hope. You really hope. And then, is he even going to play in 2027? If Stafford sticks around, Ty Simpson might be on the bench for a minimum of 3 seasons. And that could be okay. We've seen that work before. But if Stafford's still playing at an MVP level and wants to keep playing, you lit the number 13 pick on fire because you're worried about your quarterback of the future. And it didn't really seem like Sean McVay liked the pick very much. Ty Simpson is a family friend of Les Snead, the GM of the Rams. And, I mean, McVay's come out and kind of said, no, I like the pick, because what else is he going to say? But the body language in the interviews, it seemed very unusual for the Rams and Sean McVay. But I like Ty Simpson. I think 13 feels early for where he is. And the bust rate on quarterback's crazy high. I think Simpson is overall a fairly good athlete and has a fairly good arm. It's just tough to evaluate because he was hurt the second half of the year and was not accurate, and you didn't see the same level of arm talent because he was injured. But what am I supposed to do when I'm evaluating the film? Like, it is what it is. Like, I get he was injured. I hope that when he comes back healthy, he can grow, but he's not the biggest frame to begin with. So can I really expect that the arm is going to be one of the better ones in the league? I just don't believe that. But I think he gives you the ceiling of like a fringe top 10 type of starter. Like, if he can be Brock Purdy, which I don't know if that's going to work in a McVay offense the way it would under Kyle Shanahan, but I think he compares more favorably to Brock Purdy compared to Matthew Stafford, where they are night and day. Max Clare II. I like Max Clare. how many tight ends do you need? I mean, seriously. They've got a lot that I like already. Colby Parkinson, Tyler Higbee. I get maybe those two are not the ones of the future. You just spent a second-round pick on Terrence Ferguson last year, who is not bad for a rookie tight end. You have Davis Allen, who I like. Max Clare's tight end 5. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case after training camp and after preseason. I don't know that they're going to carry 5 tight ends. So maybe it's Higbee who's the cap casualty. Like, I'm purely speculating. But man, I get you don't draft for need at the top of the draft, but this is at 61. I really feel like you didn't need another tight end. But I like Claire. Keegan Trost, not elite length, not elite athleticism, but the tape was actually pretty good. I was watching Mizzou a lot for Caden Green and some of their receivers, and Trost really didn't get beat very often at all. But it seems like with average length and athleticism, he's probably not much more than a backup. And then CJ Daniels at 197 I actually like. Tim Keenan at 232 I really liked. I thought Tim Keenan was going to go a lot earlier. I thought he was a great target for the Giants in the 6th round. I wouldn't have been mad at it, in the 5th. And of course, I go back to the Giants, but these are players I watched wanting for the Giants. So Tim Keenan at 232 I think was great value. Their interior defensive line is really good, but they didn't really have a body like Tim Keenan that's like 330 plus pounds. I mean, he's gigantic. I'm going to give the Dolphins a B+. I think they kind of get boosted a bit because they did have so many picks, but this was a roster. I say was. This is a roster that's really deficient of talent overall, and that's for a number of reasons, but they traded Jalen Waddle. Tyreek Hill is no longer on the team, obviously, and they really have not had a lot of picks. So, yes, you can say they maybe haven't drafted the best. They really haven't had as many swings as a lot of other teams. They took a lot of swings in this year's draft. I think more picks than anybody. And this is 5, 10, 13 draft picks. Caden Proctor was their guy. They got him at 12. They traded down one spot. They swapped with Dallas. And it seems early for Caden Proctor, who's so inconsistent as a player, but the upside is fantastic with him. He's an enormous tackle prospect that does move pretty well. He just doesn't play with that mean streak the way you'd want from an offensive lineman, and I don't know if he's going to profile better at guard. I've heard some say that, but I don't know that he plays with the power that he should for a guy that's like 370 pounds. And the weight has varied a lot, and I think the weight will potentially be a problem. We saw it with Mekhi Becton. Will he be able to stay healthy? Will he be able to stay at an effective playing weight? That is going to be a question. And what also is a question is he going to play left tackle? They've got Patrick Paul there. Austin Jackson's under contract for just this year at right tackle. So you're going to also switch his side over to right tackle and flip everything? There are so many different ways this could go wrong for the Dolphins at 12. But the upside is good because he's got, uncoachable size, and he's a very good athlete, and he's flashed, but he's been inconsistent. He's got games where he's unstoppable and games where he is unfortunately beat way too often and a non-factor in the run game, and he just doesn't want to hit people at times. And on the offensive line, go out and hit somebody. Chris Johnson at 27. I'm glad to see him go in the first round. I really like Chris Johnson. He was CB2 off the board. I think he's got generally pretty good size. Definitely competitive toughness. He definitely likes to come up and hit, and he does a good job of staying in phase. He's got good ball skills. Chris Johnson's a really good corner, and the big question was just how athletic is he, and he comes out and he tests great. So first-round pick written all over him, even playing at San Diego State. J-Rod at 43, Jacob Rodriguez, turnover machine for Texas Tech, and I really think it will translate. He just has these perfectly timed punches, and they're so precise, and he's just always in the right spot at the right time. At some point, you have to consider that that's not luck, it's talent, and some guys just have a nose for the football. And Rodriguez comes out, also tests great. Caleb Douglas is a nice jump ball option down the board, but I was really hoping with that pick they'd take Chris Bell. And then they grabbed him at 94. Kazmarek is going to probably be a blocking tight end for them, and that's totally fine. 87 seems a bit early, but the blocking tight ends were flying off the board. Everybody wants A.J. Barner, but Chris Bell has the chance to be my favorite pick in this entire draft. Chris Bell was somebody that prior to injury I thought was absolutely going to go in the first round. He's built like a huge running back at like 6'2", 220 plus pounds, but has the ability, first of all, to break tackles and be elusive and great after the catch and powerful after the catch like a running back, but also the speed and ability to win over the top and stack corners. I think Chris Bell can be a monster in the slot. I think he can play on the outside. I think he's someone you throw screens to. I think he's somebody you throw streaks to. This is an awesome player to me. He's coming off of a big ACL tear at the end of the 2025 season. If he's healthy, he is a stud and phenomenal value at 94. I had no idea where he was going to go in this draft, but in terms of overall talent, I think he's probably a top 30 player. If you factor in the ACL tear, obviously that comes down a bit, but he's awesome. He really is. I think he had a strong case for being one of the top receivers in the draft. I don't think he's terribly below Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon. He might end up being closer to the Casey Concepcion, Omar Cooper Jr., Denzel Boston tier. Throw Deshaun Stribling in there, I guess. We'll talk about the Niners, but I love Chris Bell. Trey Moore out of Texas. He's maybe going to play linebacker. He's been a hybrid edge. He just body type wise profiles more as a linebacker. You can look at the sack numbers at UTSA. They're incredible. I don't think that's going to be him in the NFL. He's not going to be a full-time edge rusher. But does he move well enough in space? Is he instinctive enough to play linebacker? He's a good athlete. So we'll see what type of development there is there. And then Kyle Lewis. Another kind of like tweener, like Trey Moore, but he's more of the hybrid safety linebacker. But he comes up and hits, even though he's like 220 pounds. He's definitely small, but he comes up and hits. I think he has a really good feel for coverage. Michael Taff in the 5th. I didn't know if he was going to get drafted, but this was a team leader at Texas. He was a consistent starter, not afraid to come up and tackle. Core special team type of player, in my opinion. Kevin Coleman, I thought was really good value in the 5th. He was someone that was really fun to watch. And then Seydou Traore, didn't know much about, but good athlete, and he's from the international program, so still newer to playing American football over from the UK, but good athleticism, maybe worth a dart throw at 180. And then another Texas player, DJ Campbell at 200. DJ Campbell is a former really hyped up recruit that never really ended up playing to that level at Texas, but definitely came back and was their most consistent offensive lineman, maybe outside of Trevor Gooseby in 2025. And he is big. He doesn't move especially well, but he's strong as an ox. I think he's going to end up starting in the NFL at some point. And then Max Llewellyn, I thought was really nice value at 238. Maybe not the most exceptional athlete ever, but I think that at 238, he is going to be a potential roster guy that could be a nice rotational option for the Dolphins. So he is bigger, but not super explosive. I thought he was going to go a bit earlier, but I still don't know if there's going to be a ton there. The Vikings get a B. I thought they did pretty well. It's a really risky pick with Caleb Banks at 18. First of all, he's raw as a prospect, unfortunately. He's 6'6", like 330, and is an exceptional athlete coming off of a big injury. He only played in 3 games in 2025 and then broke his foot at the combine. Big men with lower body injuries, as I've said, really scare me. That those typically do not go away. And he's also a raw defensive tackle that, even though he's like 330, doesn't play with the same type of power that you might want him to. And he ends up on the ground way too much. But he's got incredibly powerful hands. The athleticism's elite. So I'm thinking that at 18, it's very risky, but it may be worth the risk if you can develop him. Interior D-line was a massive need for the Vikings. That's why they doubled down with Big Citrus, Dominique Orange at 82, 330, 330 or just about. Like, they added a ton of size on the interior defensive line. Banks has the pass rush potential where Big Citrus may never be a big-time pass rusher, but it's going to end up being tough to move these guys around, especially Big Citrus. He just doesn't really give up a whole lot of ground in the run game. Jake Golday was one of my favorite players in this draft. Tape reminded me of Carson Swessinger with the way he moves, and he just won Defensive Rookie of the Year. Golday's like 240-plus pounds, but has big-time range, big-time speed. He is twitchy. He's explosive. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. I think a great pickup at 51. Caleb Tiernan, I think, has starter potential. I think he probably will stick at tackle, but for the Vikings, the only spot might end up being right tackle. Obviously, Christian Darrisaw gets injured pretty often. Maybe Tiernan ends up moving inside to guard, but he's got a tackle's body that I think with the injuries you see there in Minnesota could end up seeing the field quite a bit. Jacoby Thomas might end up being a starter for them at 98. I thought that was completely fine value, about where I probably expected him to go. Max Bredesen, he added a fullback. I don't watch fullbacks. I apologize. Charles Demings, I didn't know until the combine, but has good size and athleticism. People like him. I couldn't get any Stephen F. Austin tape this year, or probably any year ever. I don't think I've ever watched Stephen F. Austin play football. But Demings has good overall size, and he tested well. Maybe worth a dart throw at the end of the 5th. And then Damon Claiborne and Gavin Gerhardt finished out this draft. I think Claiborne could end up being the name we all remember. He plays running back. There's opportunity there in Minnesota. He is incredibly fast and explosive and twitchy. I think he's a one-cut style running back that can just take anything to the house. He does not catch the ball particularly well at all, but he could be somebody that ends up making a real impact for the Vikings, because I think the opportunity is there. I think they're going to be looking for more juice in the backfield with Aaron Jones, with Jordan Mason. So Claiborne could be one to watch. Don't know if he ever catches the ball very much, but as someone that gets maybe a few carries a game off the rip, some of those are going to have the chance to be explosives. Man, a lot going on in New England recently. I don't know if you guys follow the news very much with the Patriots, but their head coach is a sly dog. Their draft, ooh, man, was an interesting one. Starting with Caleb Lomu, moving into Gabe Akis, Eli Raridan, who I actually think could end up being a starter post Hunter Henry. Karan Prunty, I think, was like number 600 on the consensus big board. He goes in the 5th at 171. Demetrius Crownover, Nnamdi Abiazor, Baron Morton, who I think is terrible. Jam Miller, who never really fully lived up to his potential, couldn't quite stay at 100%. And then Quintavious Hutchins. I really didn't watch a lot of this Patriots draft class, and they were ranked pretty low on the consensus boards for the most part. I watched Raridan, I watched Akis, I watched Lomu. I've seen plenty of Morton to tell you that he is horrendous. And I saw some of Abiazor, but I think their favorite pick for me was Gabe Akis at 55. He's a good pass rusher. He's solid against the run. They were looking for more off the edge, and even though they said they wanted more speed, Akis is not an exceptional athlete, but he's not bad. I think he's going to end up being a good player for New England. Again, there is opportunity there. And then Caleb Lomu. Is he moving to right tackle? So already that could be a learning curve sliding over from the left side. He's a good athlete. He doesn't necessarily have exceptional length or play strength, but moving over to right tackle, we'll see what that looks like. He doesn't have to start right away behind Morgan Moses. You can develop him, and I thought with his movement skills, much like Fano, he's got the potential to be a solid offensive lineman at a number of positions on the line, but if Will Campbell is already potentially going to have to move inside, Patriots don't want to do that, but it may end up being something that has to be done. We can't say that's not a possibility, even if they don't want to do that right now. Lomu's got some risk of that as well. So we'll see what happens. This was not my favorite draft, but I like Akis. I think Raridan could end up being a good player. Another one of these tight ends with good size and good athleticism. I think he's a potential starter, but man, this was an interesting class. I really like that what the Saints were able to do. I'm going to give them a B+. Kick things off with Jordan Tyson at number 8. Tyson's got a really strong argument as wide receiver 1 in the class. He's that level of talent. Whenever Arizona State had to have it, they went to Jordan Tyson. You can talk about the lack of toughness and play strength and contested catchability. From the games that I had seen live and saw the film on, I didn't really see that very much at all. I think Jordan Tyson was a consistent playmaker. I think he gets open. He can win down the field. The injury concerns are legitimate. Some of these are kind of maybe more fluky than others, like the broken collarbone. He tore his ACL, but has now been 2 years removed from that. And I don't know if the hamstring, that is the consistent lingering injury, is related to that at all, but that is not unusual. So is this a guy that's going to be durable enough to play a ton? You already have Chris Olave who misses time with the concussions. It's a risky play at 8, but he is incredibly talented. Christian Miller at 42 is another solid as they come type of player. I thought he was one of the 3-down defensive linemen in this class that actually has some pass rush ability from the interior, and he's just solid and sturdy on the interior. His eyes are always in the right spot. He's not generally confused at all. And, you're playing on this Georgia defense. It takes a certain guy to be a consistent starter for them. It is, the most depth, the most talent of any college football team. The Georgia defensive line, those guys are unbelievable. And Christian Miller is so good against the run, and I think does offer some pass rush upside as well. I thought that was good value at 42. One of the better interior defensive linemen. You can make an argument he was DT1 in the class. Oscar Delp at 73. I love Delp. The production's not there, but the movement skills are elite with and without the football. He's got opportunity in this Saints offense as a receiver. He really, really does. We'll see when that opportunity arises. Jeremiah Wright, Bryce Lance, Lorenzo Styles, I thought was crazy at 172. He's not good. He ran unbelievably fast, and maybe you can coach him up, and it's hard to find that level of speed, but he was a bad player at Ohio State, unfortunately. He was a real weak point for them, which is disappointing considering how good Sonny Styles is. But, man, he was a liability. I'm not going to lie. Varian Brown in the 6th, electric athlete. Fun to see what his development will look like, but maybe just a return man. And then TJ Hall at 219 is really not bad for a bigger corner. But overall, I like the Saints draft a lot. Bryce Lance is another one of these guys, kind of like Lorenzo Styles of offense. I like him more as a prospect, but another guy that's kind of just fast and still really raw as a player, but has big-time athleticism. If you can coach him up, you might have something there. Well, the Giants win the draft again. I'm going to give him an A-. I liked the Giants draft class a lot. I initially had this as an A, but the more I look at day 3, and they didn't have a lot of picks, but the more I look at day 3, the less excited I am about it, because Bobby Jamison-Travis is a good overall run stopper, and he is gigantic. They were looking for a nose, but I don't know how actually good he is, and he offers like no pass rush upside. J.C. Davis is someone where PFF liked him on the O-line, I think, but we'll see what level of player he ends up being. Probably never a starter for the Giants, but you're hoping at least good depth if there's an injury can come in. Jack Kelly, I believe, was the BYU team captain, 2-time team captain. And I feel like the athleticism's kind of underrated. It seems easy to say that about a BYU linebacker, but I liked him when I watched him. So I was kind of surprised to see him available at 193. I thought that was a nice pickup. And, the Giants are always looking for these character guys. But then I thought they had a really good day 1 and day 2. Arvell Reese, I couldn't believe was available at 5. Of course, we've got to talk about this. Everyone is saying the value of Arvell Reese, why he would go so high in the draft, is because of how he would translate off the edge. He's a hybrid player, but he's not a tweener at all. It's not like, he's too small to be an edge rusher or not strong enough, but he also doesn't move well enough in space to play linebacker. It's just not true. He played off the ball at Ohio State. He was a spy quite often and was really good. A tweener is kind of like the guy that can play both in college, but is either too small or lacks athleticism, doesn't move well enough in space to do kind of either. When you're talking about linebacker, like hybrid edge and off the ball, that is not Arvell Reese. The play strength is ridiculous. The athleticism is ridiculous. He moves well in space. I think he diagnoses well. He's going to play off the ball for the Giants, and he is an elite off-ball linebacker prospect. Elite. That's what the Giants were looking for. A really good linebacker prospect. That's what Arvell Reese is. But also, he may be playing off the edge for the Giants in a couple of years. And then the value starts to come back up with the number 5 overall pick here. I think that Brian Burns, unfortunately, had a lot of cleanup sacks for the Giants this year. I think still a good player, but within 2 years, is he going to be that same type of guy? The Giants may look to move on financially at that point if they're not getting the same level of production. I love Brian Burns, but it's a possibility. So when you take a player like this, the idea is that maybe eventually within 3 years of his 5-year rookie contract, he could be playing off the edge. That's a possibility, and that's where the value starts to creep back up. But right now, you've got Kayvon Thibodeau off the edge. You've got Abdul Carter off the edge. Brian Burns off the edge. Reese is not just another edge rusher in the mix where he's only going to play on rush downs. He's going to play off-ball linebacker, and I think he's a great prospect in that regard. He's not just a defensive end. I think, people that don't actually watch these players don't know their skill sets and just listen to what other people say or read and determine that that's fact. They've got no clue, and they just think this is a defensive end. It's like the Giants took David Bailey at 5. That's not what happened at all. It's like they took Sonny Styles at 5. Reese offers more versatility, is an equally elite athlete, and then is maybe even a better linebacker prospect than Styles, who is an awesome linebacker prospect. But Reese is right there. So I love the pick at 5. This was the only pick I wanted the Giants to make when it became a possibility. Never viewed it as a possibility. Francis Mauigoa at 10, I also think is solid value. I thought he had a chance to go at number 3 overall. He was the best overall tackle prospect in this draft. He doesn't necessarily have the movement skills of Fano, but he's got better size. He's got better play strength. He's going to end up playing guard for the Giants, and he's got a guard skill set. So is it a bit earlier than you typically see a guard go? Yes, but he's a really good player. And the Giants' offensive line, despite what a lot of Giants fans say, because the bar's been so low, the Giants' offensive line last year wasn't good. It was okay. Don't give me the PFF grade. Talk to people who actually know, actually watch. They were not that good. And that's a shame. Jermaine Illuminor, very good pass protector. He was awesome last year. Went on the field. Andrew Thomas is awesome. The interior O-line was very replaceable at all 3 positions. You're going to have John Runyon at left guard. Mauigoa is going to play right guard. You hope finally John Michael Schmitz can take a big enough step up to where he's going to be a starting caliber center. He is their starting center. He's just unfortunately hasn't been that good. Colton Hood at 37. Some people had him as CB1 in the class. He's got generally good size. It's not elite. It's fine. And he's an exceptional athlete. The tape at Tennessee this past season was so great. He had an up and down Senior Bowl week, but you default back to the tape. He had such a great season replacing Jermod McCoy. And then Malachi Fields in the 3rd. A lot of people had him ranked higher than this. I think this is about where I expected him to go. He's not an elite athlete. He's not particularly explosive, but he's got incredible ball skills and deep ball tracking. And the Giants needed a 50-50 type of receiver. They did not have this on the roster. I'm not going to include Neighbors in that conversation because he's more than that. But Hyatt can't catch. You lose Wandale. Darius Slayton can't catch. You bring in Darnell Mooney. He's actually made some contested catches over his career, but not at an elite level necessarily. Fields can do it at an elite level. So To get a big-bodied outside receiver at 74 that can catch the football and is a decent enough athlete, although not spectacular, yeah, I think it's good enough value. And I think the Jets also get an A-. They had a good draft. Not everyone's favorite Jets draft, and I think they probably could have done better with the picks that they did have. I'm going to be honest. I don't love David Bailey at 2. I think Arvell Reese was a much better pick for them, and they went with David Bailey, who is a better pass rusher right now. No question. He has great explosiveness and straight line speed. He's a little stiff. He's not particularly bendy. He does do a great job of cornering. I mean, he's an explosive athlete, and he's a developed, refined rusher. So I don't hate him as a player. I just didn't think he was close to the number 2 overall player in the class. And the Jets said, you know what? He's the best speed rusher. We're going to grab him at 2. But I really question if he's going to end up being a 3-down player, or at least an effective one. Taking him at number 2 overall, he's going to be a 3-down player, because he has to be with the number 2 overall pick. But he doesn't really defend the run that well. He doesn't really have the best play strength. I mean, you see it more with like speed to power as a rusher, but in the run game, he's just not particularly good. He's got to slip a lot of these blocks to make plays, and he can get into the backfield with speed, but he gets thrown around a little bit. So designated pass rusher risk at 2 is just, it's a scary proposition, but I think he does have a good chance to end up being a double-digit sack type of guy, which is kind of like the metric that a lot of fans care about to determine whether an edge rusher is good or not. So Bailey's probably going to end up getting the value back on this one, but I don't love it at number 2 overall with some of the other players on the board that I preferred. Kenyon Sadiq at 16, you can make the process argument that the Jets passed on, and they were different draft classes with different players, and the Jets were in a different position at the time, but they passed on Brock Bowers. They passed on then Loveland and Warren just to take Sadiq in 2026, who is also like not really a true inline tight end, but I think he's going to be able to play in the slot, as is Omar Cooper Jr., who I love, and I think he's going to be a warrior up the seam, and they might even be used out of the backfield as well. I mean, he can be like the hybrid fullback tight end, the H-back, but also, power slot. He's got a unique skill set. And Mason Taylor is still going to be your developable inline tight end of the future. Omar Cooper, so great after the catch, but also does a good job of getting open. He's a good athlete. I think he's going to be a really nice complementary piece in this offense. He's got a chance to end up being their wide receiver too. And then D'Angelo Pons at 50. I don't know that slot corner was their biggest need ever with Jarvis Brownlee, but Pons is an elite nickel cornerback prospect where he's 5'8", 175 pounds. I think he bulked up to like 182 for the combine. He's still 5'8" and a quarter. They might list him at 5'9", but his measurables came back 5'8" and a quarter. So he's incredibly small. He just doesn't play like it, right? He's incredibly physical. There are times with the ball in the air, he just can't get up to it because they're way bigger than he is. But he's a good athlete, and his competitiveness, his toughness, his ability to come down and hit, it's all fantastic. If he were 5'11", 185 with better arm length, he's probably CB1 in the draft. But he's not. He's 5'8", 175 pounds, was, I think, actually a little bit heavier than his listed playing weight. That's tough. That's tough. He's going to be a slot-exclusive type of corner, you would imagine, but I love the player. Darrell Jackson Jr. at 103. I love taking a chance on him. If you'd seen the mock drafts, when we went a little bit deeper and we had talked about the defensive tackles, Darrell Jackson was somebody I highlighted as somebody that I thought would really warrant more attention than what he had been getting. And he is raw as a prospect, but he's got such unbelievable size and length, and he's a good athlete. I think there's untapped potential there. Yes, he's another FSU interior D lineman, and I'm not just scouting the helmet, but he did remind me of Joshua Farmer. So, and I liked him as a prospect. I think that the length is so valuable to these guys in the trenches, and Jackson's got a ton of it. Cade Klubnik in the 4th. Cade just was not very good in 2025. Disappointing. Don't know if he's ever going to start for the Jets, but at least it's more youth to add in. You don't necessarily have to play Brady Cook. You can see what Cade Klubnik's all about. And then they finished out with Inez Cooper. I thought VJ Payne was actually nice value at 228. I think the Jets had a good draft. And this is a roster that has spent a lot of money in free agency, and they've drafted well on offense over the past couple seasons. They still need the quarterback. They still have 3 first-round picks in 2027 to take a QB if they want to. I think this Jets offense has done a really, really good job of basically making sure there are no holes outside QB. And I think based on how dysfunctional the Raider offense was, Geno Smith might be a lot better in 2026 than he was in 2025. There's also a chance he is just legitimately over the hill and he's done, in which case you're going to end up picking high again. And even if you don't end up with like the first or second pick in the draft, you have 3 first-round picks to potentially trade up for your franchise quarterback. And I think the Jets are in a prime position to do that. They've really done a good job of fixing this roster. The defense isn't perfect, but that offense for the future really does look elite, just missing the most important piece. Just going to leave an A- on the screen for the Philadelphia Eagles. Thought they did a really nice job. Micah Morris is an exceptional athlete. Unfortunately, the pad level is way too high, but that's a technique thing that could potentially be fixed. He's a great athlete, could be a potential starter, and they got him in the 6th round. There's development to be done to get to that point, but it may exist. Cole Wisniewski was a solid player on Texas Tech's defense, although unexceptional. Uar Bernard is from the international program. He's never played football. His testing was absolutely outstanding, and that maybe puts it lightly. I mean, he is like 6'3", 280 and ran a 4.6 40. He's incredibly strong, incredibly explosive from all the testing numbers, and that's all we have. The agilities were bad, but if you watch them, I don't know that he knows how to do the 3-cone drill. I don't think he's ever done it before. So is that really going to be a problem? This is a big developmental piece, but the athleticism is incredible. And then Keyshawn James Newby out of New Mexico to finish things out. I like this draft. They traded up with the Cowboys to get Mekhi Lemon, who I think is exceptional. He is not the best athlete. He's undersized. He doesn't really play like it. He plays above the rim, as I've said. He's a contested catch machine. He's fearless. He is awesome as a player, and he may be slot exclusive, but he could be a big, big part of this Eagles passing game. If Jalen Hurts ever wants to throw over the middle, Mekhi Lemon's going to find a way to catch it. Eli Stowers is a receiver. I don't really view him as a tight end. I don't think he's going to play in line. He doesn't have the frame for it, doesn't have the bulk for it, isn't a good blocker, but is a really good receiving tight end, and even though he's not a tight end. He's a big wide receiver, essentially. And he moves pretty well for his size. Markel Bell, speaking of size, is enormous. It's like 6'9", 350 pounds. He's huge. Plays left tackle. Moves okay for his size, but, I mean, he doesn't move that well. But for his size, it's not bad. And at 68, the potential to start at left tackle after Jordan Mailata, there could be something here. And then Cole Payton in the 5th is a nice Jalen Hurts option or replacement if he goes down with injury. Payton can run. He's like 230 pounds. He can lower the shoulder. He can do the tush push, I'm sure, with that size. And he throws his body weight around. And he's got a pretty strong arm. Lefty quarterback, so it's a little bit weird, but I think he's got the arm talent to make pretty much every throw on the field. So it's just about the consistency. The accuracy is a big question, but there's something here. Pittsburgh gets a B. I think the Steelers had a pretty good draft. I hated what happened at 21 for them. They had so many picks on day 2 that they could have moved up for Mekhi Lemon, who they called before they were on the clock. What are they doing? They essentially let the Eagles trade ahead of them for the player they were on the phone with. It's like, It's unbelievable what happens in this league sometimes. And then they pivoted to Maxi Iheanacho after they couldn't draft Lemon, who they tried to draft. We know they tried to get him. We know Iheanacho was not their first pick. But here he is. And I like him as a player. He had a very good Senior Bowl. He's got really good length. I had him in the first round, I feel like, pretty much before anybody. And I think when you factor in the size, athleticism, fairly new to playing football, but he's got the stuff that you can't teach, and the length just makes him such a tough player to try and get around, and that really works at right tackle. Jeremy Bernard in the second, he is not the flashiest option, but he blocks well, he gets open, he catches the football. He's maybe not the elite separator or athlete, but I think he's just good. He's a reliable chain mover. I don't think he's going to be like a dominant wide receiver 1 in the NFL, but he's a solid wide receiver 2 and a contributor to the offense. And I think that's going to work out well in Pittsburgh, given their current receivers with DK and now Michael Pittman Jr. Drew Aller in the third, taking a chance on the big arm. Drew Aller not that good at playing quarterback at this point, and the accuracy problem really is. But he's got a big arm. We'll see if the Steelers can develop him. Felt like a Steeler, he was. Dalen Everett at 85. I love Dalen Everett. I really do. I think his size is very good, but his movement skills are so good. Like, the hip fluidity is fantastic. That's so important at quarterback or cornerback, and obviously has the prestige of playing at Georgia. He was a good player. Not exceptional at Georgia, but a good player, and I think his best football might be ahead of him. His size and movement skills are very, very good. It's kind of rare to see someone that is a bigger, longer corner that can move the way he does. And he's not 6'4", but he doesn't have to be. He's a bigger corner in general, and I think he's going to be a really good fit here. Can start on the outside at some point for Pittsburgh, I would imagine. Jennings Dunker, I did not like as a right tackle prospect, but I do think he would translate well to guard. That's how the Steelers drafted him. Could end up being good value on the inside. He doesn't move especially well out in space, and I think playing on an island at tackle, real problem. But at guard, that's not going to be a need. He just gets to play rugged and maul people in the run game, and that could be good enough. Caden Weegan is really a return man in the fourth, but I think he also showed at the East-West Shrine game that he has developed a bit as a receiver. The routes look pretty good, and Eli Heidenreich has a similar skill set. I think he's going to be like a slot receiver, but he can also really catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run the ball out of the backfield. He's a good athlete. He can block. Eli Heidenreich is a stud. Going to be a core special teamer. I love Eli Heidenreich as a player. Robert Spears-Jennings at 224. Gabe Rubio was not a player I watched at 210. Riley Nowakowski is like the Connor Hayward replacement. This is a no-brainer for Pittsburgh. Again, not like the flashiest, but players that make a team click. So it's like, oh, why Jeremy Bernard when we could have taken someone with higher potential? It's like, because he's going to be good. He's going to be solid, even if never incredible. Why Jennings Dunker? Because he's got a chance to be a starter at guard. Why Caden Weegan? Well, returners do have some value at 121. It's not the worst thing in the world. He may be able to become a slot receiver. We needed the hybrid H-back, fullback, can block, can catch out of the backfield, Riley Nowakowski. They took role players a lot in this draft, and they're still trying to win now. And I think role players can help you do that, even if none of these guys ever develop into being the best in their respective position groups in the league. They're going to be solid for Pittsburgh, and that's the team they're playing for. So that matters for something. Everyone hates the 49ers draft, but not me. Not me. We'll see if that ends up being a good call or a bad call. I'm giving them a B-. Dejon Stribling at 33 felt early. I like Dejon Stribling a lot. Now at 33, that did seem a bit crazy, but he's got good size. He's got really good speed. He can space the field. He catches the ball well. He's good after the catch. He does a lot of things really well. So did I ever expect him to be the first pick of round 2? He was one pick away from being a first rounder. And maybe they would have took him in the first round had they not traded back multiple times. That would have been insane. But I like Dejon Stribling, so it's hard for me to be upset about the pick so much because I really do like the player. It did seem early at 33. Romello Height at 70, though, to replace Bryce Huff as your undersized explosive speed rusher, like, that's pretty good. I didn't think he'd be a fit for every team. I don't believe him to be a 3-down player. He is legitimately very small off the edge. He was playing at like 230 pounds, maybe even slightly less. But he is explosive as hell, and he can be a firecracker or rocket off the edge. Kalen Black. People are like, how could you take Kalen Black at 90? He was a day 3 type of player, 6th round. I didn't see that at all with Kalen Black. I really didn't. I thought he was one of the better running backs in this draft. You saw him play so well down the stretch for Indiana. He is explosive with the football. I mean, you saw him take some of these inside handoffs and explode through the A gap, the B gap. No wasted movement. Head down, working north-south, getting yardage. I think Kalen Black's like really solid. So 90 seems a bit early. We know the Niners are always going to take running back high. I know the skill players on day 2 have not worked out for the 49ers, but I like the players they got. Even if it did seem early when they got them, it's like Grayson Halton's good value. You're looking for more pass rush from the interior. I don't know if Grayson Halton is a 3-down player, but he's undersized. He's explosive. He's going to make an impact as a pass rusher on rush downs, or on clear passing downs, even if he doesn't play on rush downs. Carver Willis in the 4th, I think, has starter potential. It's like, that's good value. Ephesians Prysock has starter potential as a boundary corner. He moves really well for being 6'4". He's gigantic. The ball production's not great, but I think he's shown to have fairly good ball skills. You look at how well he caught the football at the combine. I know that doesn't seem like it'd be that important, but how these guys show growth over their career, I think, is important. And I think that you look at a combine setting and you say, yeah, they're not in pads. A lot of these guys still don't catch the football well or naturally. I think Ephesians Prysock did. So I think there's untapped ball production there. And then Jaden Duggar and Enrique Cruz to finish things out in the 5th. Enrique Cruz is a really good athlete. There may be a chance for development there. I mean, he tested extraordinarily well. It's hard to teach that. So you've got some untapped potential, I think, with this team, but also some players that I think are good right now. And yet, just like Pittsburgh, it may be a bunch of players that are role players more than guys that are going to dominate and rise to the top of their position groups in the NFL. But again, they're playing for the Niners. If they're going to come in and fit specified or specific design roles for the 49ers, that's going to help the 49ers get better and win. Thought they got a lot of these, role players, but it's easy to see how they're going to fit. And I feel like they did pretty well, even though a lot of people are killing this draft. And I'll give the Seahawks a B- as well. I mean, people did not like my Jadarian Price grade in the video, but it is a running back at 32. I don't think most years he'd be close to a first-round pick. I think he's a good running back prospect, not an elite one. It's early at 32. It just is. However, he's going to get opportunity for Seattle. He's a good player. He's going to be productive. So it's going to end up looking like a fairly good pick because he's a good player. And with the opportunity to be RB1, RB2 alongside Zach Charbonnet, he's going to be productive. He is good. So it's just you got to factor in where he's being paid along with the rest of the league's running backs. He's just not one of the best running backs in the league. I don't know if he's ever going to be an elite running back, but he's got the potential to be because at running back, it's about opportunity. And with that, if you're in a good situation, production pretty much always follows. And he is good. I mean, he didn't have a ton of touches at Notre Dame. Not a lot of wear on the tires. I keep saying not a lot of tread on the tires. That's like when someone's completely worn down. I guess I didn't even realize I was saying that. but he's got a lot of tread left on the tires. Not a lot of wear. Got like 8 or 9 touches a game. It's so unusual to see a player like that drafted in the first round, but he is good. So I'm sure it's going to end up looking okay. I like Bud Clark a lot. It just seemed a bit early at 64, but he's got great ball skills. He's a big-time playmaker. He had as good of an offseason as anybody. I mean, he rose up from the day 3 conversation to the 64th pick of the draft, and it's not weird that he got taken here. He's good. So when you lose all the defensive backs that you did in this offseason, like, of course, Reek Woolen, who I think you're fine with losing, by the way, and Kobe Bryant, Bud Clark's got a chance to end up being a starter. I think he could also fill in the nickel if there's an injury. Julian Neal has the size that they typically look for at corner. I think he could end up being a starter on the outside. Bo Stevens could also end up being a starter at guard. Great value. Just like he's not the biggest or the longest. He's not the best athlete, but he's just a solid player. Doesn't get beaten pass pro. Can move people enough in the run game. It's just like the main knock on him was the inside and outside zone like flexibility, where he's good in that type of a scheme. Can he play anywhere else? I think Seattle's a pretty good landing spot for him. Emmanuel Henderson in the 6th, Andre Fuller, Devin Eastern, and Michael Dansby. It's just everyone's taking this entire Arizona secondary, I guess. But overall, I thought this was a fairly good draft for Seattle. I think you have so few holes on this roster. They just won a Super Bowl. I don't know if anybody really moves the needle for them, but basically what they decided is that their real hole was at running back, and that was it. So they took Jadarian Price where they did. The drop-off at running back post Jadarian Price was pretty severe, so I don't hate it as much from that perspective. You can't just look at it as it is a first-round pick, but it's number 32 overall, and it's in this draft class. It's not number 32 overall in every draft class. It's the only one that really matters is the draft class in which it's in. So not a ton of talent in this draft compared to a lot of others that we've seen, and especially not at running back. It was not a deep running back class. It was lacking top-end talent really outside of the Notre Dame guys, but especially Jeremiah Love. So it's early for Price, but he's going to be good for them, I'm sure. Got to give the Tampa Bay Bucks an A. What a draft. I mean, they got some of my favorite players in this draft. Ruben Bain at 15 is a steal. He's got short arms. Does it matter, really? He's so powerful. He's a pressure machine. He's elite against the run. This is truly an awesome edge player. And going to team up with Todd Bowles in this defense, it's exactly what they needed. You know, I had talked a lot about the Bucks this cycle being like 15's a bad spot for Tampa to be because the edge rushers will be long gone. There's not a corner worth taking. There's not a linebacker worth taking. Is there going to be an offensive lineman worth taking, and they really have bigger fish to fry? What do you do here if you're Tampa? Well, Ruben Bain fell to them. This was a much better pick, I believe, than what Kenyon Sadiq to the Bucks would have been at 15. I saw why it made sense, and it would have been a good combo with Baker, you know, throwing up the seams, but Bain was absolute best case scenario. I really wanted to have him fall to 14 in my final mock. I ended up getting him off the board a little bit earlier than that, but I thought the possibility existed. I'm like, if he gets to the Ravens, he's not going to be there for the Bucks. But they opt to go Venga Ioane, which made a ton of sense. And then Ruben Bain fell right to the Tampa Bay Bucks, and it's like, how do you not take him? I like Josiah Trotter a lot. I've talked a lot over the last year about how he's a redshirt sophomore in a class full of a lot of older prospects. He's not great in space as a cover player, but he is good working downhill. He's a decent athlete, and he's so good against the run. He's just going to be a thumper in the box, and there's big-time value to that. Teams are running the ball more than ever, you know, over the past decade, and having a guy like Josiah Trotter in the middle of your defense, that's going to help subdue that a bit. Ted Hurst, 84. I love Ted Hurst. Why did he not transfer from Georgia State if he's so good? Well, he transferred up from Valdosta State and then dominated the Sun Belt. But Ted Hurst is awesome. He's got elite size, He's an absolutely elite athlete. He's got elite ball skills. Is all of this going to translate and look the same as it did at Georgia State? Yeah, definitely not. But he's got great potential as an outside receiver. I thought 84 was later than I thought he would go. I thought he had a chance to go in round 2. Like, if Dejon Stribling was the 33rd pick in the draft, I think Ted Hurst could have been in that same range as well. Like, if the Giants were to take Ted Hurst at 38 or 37, I would have talked myself into it. I think he's that good of a player. But he gets to 84. Keontae Scott at 116. I also love Keontae Scott. He's a highly specialized player. He's not good going back. He's really only going to be a slot corner. He's not going to play on the outside. I don't know if he's going to play safety. He is an elite blitzer from the slot. He's great working downhill. He takes some chances in coverage. Oftentimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. He's really a do-or-die type of player, but he is a heat-seeking missile working downhill, I should say. He's awesome. At 116, great fit into this defense. He's going to be fun. Not the boundary corner that maybe they needed, but Keontae Scott's a really fun player to potentially play as a sub-package player or rotate in the nickel. DeMonte Capehart, I thought, was a really good fit for their defense. And you look at this team, yes, they're looking to add more pass rush, but you got to be able to stop the run. You do. And then Billy Schrauth, I thought, would go earlier than this. Maybe not tremendously earlier, but I thought he was in the next tier of guards after Basantis, Pregnon, and of course, Rutledge, who ended up going in the first round. I thought he was in the next tier of guards. Pregnon lasted on the board a little while longer, but Schrauth at 160, I think, has starter potential. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow, but I think he's got the potential to be a starter for them, and then Bauer Sharp in the 6th. I couldn't give this anything but an A. They didn't have a ton of picks, only finished with 7, but I think they made 7 really good pickups for what the Bucs needed. And if you can develop these guys, like Ted Hurst and maybe even Keontae Scott, who's an older prospect, but Ted Hurst is the fun one for me. If Josiah Trotter takes any steps forward in coverage, he's going to be such a good player. And then Bain is a beast today, tomorrow, the next day. He is awesome. I think a B+ is totally fair for the Tennessee Titans because they got some good players and good value. Carnell Tate maybe seemed a bit early at 4. They really needed receiver. I get they have some vets in there. You bring in Wan'Dale Robinson to play the slot. Carnell Tate is going to be playing on the outside, so that doesn't really matter. But it's a nice player to add in. But is he an upgrade over Alec Iomatter? I believe so. Over Chimere Dike, who isn't really the most true outside receiver in the first place. And then again, they have some vets in there. Can't count on Calvin Ridley to stay healthy and productive. But Carnell Tate, I think, is fine at 4. He's got great ball skills. He really took a step up as a route runner in 2025. He's got a chance to be the wide receiver 1 type for Tennessee. He's going to get the opportunities, and he's a weapon for Cam Ward to lean on. I don't mind it at 4. If this is a pick for Cam Ward, which it is, I'm in on that. Keldrick Falk, they traded up to get. I like Keldrick Falk. I think he's underrated. He may never be an elite pass rusher. He doesn't have to be. You've got to be able to defend the run. You have to be able to set the edge to be an NFL player. He is a 3-down player, and he might even slide inside on passing downs. If you have an interior defensive line with the 3 of Jeffrey Simmons, John Franklin Myers, and Keldrick Falk, oh my God, that's going to be tough to deal with. And then have some speed rush off the edge. Like, their interior D-line is better than their edge rushers at rushing the passer. If you have Falk and Jermaine Johnson, Jeffrey Simmons and John Franklin Myers are that good on the interior, which I tweeted that out, and it's like, well, yeah, they have 2 of the best interior pass rushers in the league. No shit, Sherlock. It's like, but that's unusual. Like, even if they're good interior pass rushers, they're never better than the edge rushers on a team. There are instances, but it's rare. And yeah, they have 2 of the best interior D linemen in terms of getting to the QB in the league, and John Franklin Myers is not a typical interior defensive lineman in terms of size, but they're going to stop the run. They're going to get after the passer. I like this Tennessee defensive line, and Anthony Hill is a blitzer from the next level. Maybe he even plays off the edge some on 3rd downs. He's such a great downhill player. Another friend of the channel, and of course, a Texas Longhorn, so I am biased, but I really love Anthony Hill. He was such a playmaker and team leader for Texas. I think he's going to be a dog. Really excited to see his future. Fernando Carmona, I think, tested extremely well, so it'll be fun to see how he develops. And then Nick Singleton falls to the 5th, has some injury things, but he's explosive. And when he's healthy, he's a difference maker. I'm excited to see what his career looks like. I think he's a player worth taking a chance on in the 5th. Jackie Marshall is undersized, but explosive. Could be a fun speed rush option as well, and playing under John Franklin Myers. That's a good guy to learn from. Pat Coogan, O-line depth in the 6th. I didn't think he was an especially impressive prospect. And then Jaron Kanak in the 7th. Overall, thought the Titans did a good job. Maybe not the flashiest draft, but Marshall as the JFM understudy, Singleton as a potential running back of the future, currently only needs to be RB3. Hill as, a future starting linebacker, but really offers a ton of value as a blitzer. Could be fun off the edge with the defensive line they have that features Falk, now Jackie Marshall in some capacity, John Franklin Myers, Jeffrey Simmons, Jermaine Johnson, and then a new toy for Cam Ward. Like, that's fun. And then I thought, even with limited picks, the Commanders killed it in the draft. I mean, this is a good haul. Sonny Styles at 7 ends up being a good value pick. One of the best players in the draft. Happens to play a not-so-valuable position at linebacker, but he's awesome. Doesn't miss tackles. Exceptional athlete. There was a misnomer that Sonny Styles was only hyped up because he tested well at the Combine. Who has ever heard about Sonny Styles prior to the Combine? Are you joking? Did you watch any football this season? Oh no, the 6'5", 240-pound linebacker that looks like an elite athlete on the field, that is not afraid to take on blocks on the inside, that doesn't miss tackles. Yeah, he was playing at Ohio State. It was a college football playoff team. Yeah, he was a complete unknown prior to the Combine. He only got the hype because he tested well. Wow. Are you kidding me? Complete casual take. Antonio Williams, future starting slot for the Commanders. They needed to add more at receiver. Like, the receiver room is so bad. Antonio Williams is a good player. So you get Terry on the outside. I don't know what Traylon Burks is going to do. I don't think he is going to feature much, or I don't think he's going to be much of a factor, even if he plays a lot. Antonio Williams could be a playmaker in the slot. And then Joshua Josephs in the 5th. Didn't test great, undersized, but a really good speed rusher. At 147, I love the value for the Commanders. Fat Man, Katron Allen at 187. He's a really good player. And he's not particularly explosive. He's not the twitchiest, but he's a head down, bounce off of tackles, go through you, short yardage back that is going to score some touchdowns here for Washington, I would imagine. And then they finish with Matt Golban and Ethan Kaliakmanis from Rutgers, who actually had a pretty good season for Rutgers. He was somebody that I thought could be drafted even higher than this during the season. But then, 223 ends up making sense. But overall, I think a really solid draft. I love their first 4 picks, and they didn't have a ton of picks, but I think they made the most of them. And that's at 771 and 147 for their first 3. Like, you had 1 pick in the top 70 and 3 picks in the top 150. This is a pretty good return, but that's going to be it for the draft grades. Of course, I should have opened this up, but draft grades are stupid. You never know how these players are going to develop. You never know, what's going to happen. You're just basing it off of what you saw in college. They're going to a completely different scenario and situation, surrounded by different people, potentially in a different scheme. Who knows what's going to happen, right? And we're not going to know for a few years how good any of these picks were. But in terms of where these guys were as prospects and where they were drafted into which teams and how the teams approached the draft, these are my grades. I know you'll disagree, and that's cool. That's fun to have conversations about these prospects in football, and we all care about it so much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I have a way too early 2027 mock draft coming up. I've got reacting to my way too early 2026 mock draft coming up. And if you have any other draft videos you want to see, let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.